report.
Welcome, everybody. We are 7 o'clock. Are we live?
Yes, sir.
I'll dispense with anything official. We're here to just start with the budget discussions for the departments that are listed here, and I will take it from there. What I would ask is brought to as a suggestion. When we're going through the departments, I would ask that people not refer in names of specific individuals. Talk about the title and the actual item. That way it doesn't actually get to a personal discussion to be inflammatory. We had a request that came up last year that we initiated, and that played out potentially as a witch hunt, and I'd try to avoid that moving forward this year. That said, number one, looks like assessing. Diane is off the hook this year.
You want me to just start right in, or do you have questions, or?
Why don't you, one of the things that we talked about on our last meeting, and we received the goals, why don't you start with that and then lead into dialogue, and we'll pick it up from there if you could, please.
I'd like to get the maps probably in better order, some type of a storage system. We have an awful lot of surveys, but they're all mostly in a big pile, and if somebody comes in, now I just tell them, here they are, look and see if you can find it, rather than being able to go to a spreadsheet and look it up and say, yes, we have that, and here it is. We need to come up with some type of system. But some of the racks and things you can buy are really expensive, so we need to figure out some way to do it cost effectively. What else?
Chair, may I ask a question on that?
Sure, please.
In other communities, now that we're getting it more digitized or actually online, is it the potential that we actually could do it, just bring it up on a screen and have them actually go through it that way versus the idea of going through the paper? I'm just wondering.
Yep, it would. That would be, a project. We'd have to have probably somebody come in and do that for us to scan it all and put it in a nice order.
Do you need to scan it, or has it actually already been laid out in other formats? I'm not sure with some of the.
No, these are paper surveys.
Okay, so actually surveys themselves.
And some of them, are 30, 40 years old. So
not so much just the tax maps, it's more the individual surveys.
It's more surveys that people have had done over the years, a lot of the subdivisions, and then individual lots as they get broken off, they'll do a survey, which we love to have because we know that lot is correct.
Gotcha,
yeah.
Any places in mind that come to mind in particular, surrounding areas that might use a system that you heard about or are fond of, just talking with your counterparts and colleagues?
No, I don't. No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
The goals that we have here: make property tax cards and assessments available online.
Yes.
E911 addressing officer to become a shared responsibility with code enforcement. Work with the department heads on business brochure and succession planning.
Yes.
You would add to that adequate filing?
Yes. Yeah. For the maps. And
is that a good list for the coming year for tasks?
Yes.
And the reason I ask that is the budget that you have here, is it reflective of being able to help you achieve the goals that you set?
Not with the taking care of the survey maps, unless we had got some extra help, and then we could at least inventory it and get a list into a spreadsheet. We could at least do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that said, why don't we go through your department?
Okay.
We'll hit the questions as they come up, but you point to the topics there to make that case as you've addressed.
Well, the big one, number 2, would be adding $14,560 for a 20-hour-a-week assistant. I spend a lot of my time photocopying, answering routine questions, answering the phone, and I get paid a decent wage for doing those tasks. I mean, that's, do you want somebody doing those types of things? And getting an extra person in our office, that is an opportunity for succession planning, because right now there is a significant shortage of assessors out there. It's really hard to fill a position when it becomes vacant. You can't get experienced assessors, and this way we could have somebody in the office. They could take some classes as they become available. And it's really important to have in-office experience, especially, I'm going to be here maybe a few more years. Well, it would be so much easier transition if somebody's already here, they're familiar with, with the town, how things work, where to find something. A lot of towns back 7 or 8 years ago made a lot of cuts, got rid of a lot of their assistants, and I think that's why we're having the problem today. I did some checking around, and the other towns, I thought Presque Isle was probably the closest to Lisbon, has almost the same population, and they have a full-time assessor and a full-time assistant. Winslow, they have a population of 7,500. They have a full-time assessor, and they have a full-time clerical that gets shared with the codes office, and they also do general assistance in that office. Skowhegan, they have a full-time assessor's assistant, and they have an assessor's agent that comes in 1 day a week. And they're a population of 8,300. And then Ellsworth, they have a full-time assessor with a full-time assistant, and they have a population of 7,900. So,
Position that you speak of on 5110.
Yep.
Those responsibilities that would be going to that role, how much of your day is being spent handling that right now? Just a ballpark.
I would say
or week.
Probably 2 to 3 hours a day.
2 to 3 hours a day?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it varies because when the beginning of the month and the end of the month, when the counter is busy, then I get busy because people are in here. They've got a question. They start looking at the maps. And all that stuff is out there for them, but it takes time. And it's just like when Dennis is out of the office a lot because he has inspections to do. People come in, they want a codes folder. Got to go get the codes folder. And then do I stand there and wait because we don't want a folder to just walk off, but I'm standing there waiting, spinning my wheels because I have stuff to do. So sometimes I just leave them, And I sit in that little office because it's the only way I can get work done, but it's not fair to Dennis when someone comes to the counter and asks for me, and it's not fair for the girls at the counter who have to either come get me or call me on the phone or something. So it's really not the best situation.
Can you give us a little bit of education? Didn't we have a position and a half, or how did that work? There used to be an administrative person. What did we not have when we had that administration role?
Well, I was the assistant assessor for, I think, 2 years, and Bill was the assessor. And that probably would have worked very well had we had a different contract. Usually when you do that, you have a set contract and say, the assessor will be here on this day for this many hours. And that contract was not like that. So Bill showed up, you didn't know, and public would get angry because they'd come in, want to see the assessor. I couldn't tell him when he was going to be in.
The only question I asked, and again, I think it's a real, obvious thing that probably needs to be done. But the hardest thing about a 20-hour work week is would you pick the times? I mean, it's really hard to pick the times you would want that person there because,
Yep.
you know, it seems that the person's there in the morning and leave, and in the afternoon you're actually kind of getting swamped. I'm not saying that morning opportunity you can actually get more stuff done. And the second part of that would be is, do you really think, I mean, if you're trying to train, when I think of someone actually coming in working a part-time, I think of someone that's actually semi-retired that actually is just looking for some part-time work, or someone fairly young. I'm just wondering if someone that you'd be training for assessing, if you'd find that right person that would be going for a 20-hour week. That's just a question I have. I don't know.
There are a lot of things they could do to start with that wouldn't take a lot of training. I have filing piled up that needs to be done. All kinds of things.
So career pathing perspective here, and I heard you talking about that.
Yes.
So I guess for me, it would come down to a recruiting.
Yes.
So it's not like you're going to throw out a want ad and get somebody who's going to come in and say, hey, it's going to be more of targeting current college students or somebody who maybe has some experience in, and forgive me, I don't know all the particulars, some of the experience in that particular background or field, whether it's construction or otherwise, or making some sort of property assessments. So how do we target that and keep them? Because I think that it's hard to say how you're going to make a living on 20 hours a week and not supplement your income while you're transitioning from what you're doing now to hopefully an assessor's role 5 years down the line.
Well, probably one area would be the property tax school that they hold in August. That's, you know, the new people go to school for 4 days, all day, 8 to 4, to take classes, and you take the test on that Friday to see if you get certified. That would be a good place to kind of do some recruiting. And also there's another school they started running. It's in May up at Sunday River. That would be another opportunity too.
Okay.
Because even Maine Revenue Services is having a hard time filling positions in their office, the Property Tax Division.
So even if you didn't find someone that was going to be long-term and taking over your position, the idea of having someone 20 hours a week would definitely help you get where you need to be.
Yes, because things are getting done now, but they're getting done it's right to the wire. And sometimes I've had my back against the wall, but everybody in the office is shorthanded, so there's nobody that can help. You've just got to let stuff pile up, and then when it gets to a point, you go to that pile and then do the other pile.
Can we jump to contractual services?
Yes.
I read the narrative. We used to get it with the relationship for the out from the reval, and now we're having to pay. So
Yes.
what are we still getting for that?
That's really more of a contingency fund, just because you never know what's going to come up, like the abatement request from the hydro this year. I mean, there are very few people that do hydros. It's just, I guess, a safety net in case something should come up where we would need legal advice maybe or something like that. You just don't know.
Okay.
You should always have a little something set aside for that.
Any other questions within the department, guys?
The only other question I have is if you actually were to hire someone for part-time for 20 hours a week, regardless if they think that's going to be a long-term position or not, is there any basic training that person would need to have as far as legality-wise to work with people and give information? I'm just wondering if your professional development of the $400, I mean, that would get chewed up really quick if you actually had someone that you wanted to just do some basic training with.
If we had somebody that they could probably go to take a couple classes at the property tax school in August, and then throughout the year they offer different courses, or sometimes it's just a meeting where you can go. You always pick up some information.
So I guess starting off, it could be just a clerical person where they're just
Yes.
helping you actually answer the
Yep.
phone, take
And,
care of people, and then work into something different.
Start out clerical, and if they're interested and capable, then make it something more. I mean, that's how I started. I started here at 12 hours a week, helping Jerry.
Any other questions?
I got a quick one.
Yeah.
As far as like professional development, mileage, and all that, individual, is that taking into account the second, administrative assistant?
Yes, yes, it is, yeah.
That was kind of where I was leaning on that too, Councilor Crawford. I had a list prepared coming in for, past history and that type of stuff with specific line items for recommended reductions, but asking the question, tying it back to your goals, and I'm still hearing that there may be need for something for physical cost on actually addressing the filing if this individual is there, that it isn't in these figures, that cutting it, we just work against ourselves too. Yes.
The question, and again, this is just on the side as far as for looking for what you do. I mean, do other communities, if a real estate office comes in and is actually looking for information on a piece of property and that takes 15, 20 minutes, a half hour, do other communities charge for that, or is that typically, some of the realtors are not from town, they're from out of town. Is there an opportunity there? And again, I'm just asking just because it does take some of your time. But
most communities have their stuff online, their property record cards online.
Okay.
And the ones that come in all the time, the realtors and the appraisers, I basically got them trained. Here are the cards. You look them up.
Self-service.
If you need a copy, you let me know. The codes folders are here. This is what we have. I'm in here working. You let me know if I can help you.
Okay. So it's not taking a lot of your time in a sense.
No, because the regular ones that come in all the time, they're okay.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
All right, I'll ask the heavy question. You've heard the case for the additional 20-hour position. Receptive to the idea? No to the idea? Delay the discussion to a later date. That's the way we kind of approached it last time. Where's everybody living on the topic?
And may I ask a question? Was that under your recommendations, your final recommendations in your budget?
And yeah,
I want to see
the town manager is recommending that this actually stay. I've heard the case. I'm receptive to the idea, but I need to know what you guys are thinking.
I'd want to see a little bit more of what every other budget has before we start making decisions about
So
adding
future
positions.
discussion,
That's just
huh?
that's where I live, future discussion.
So last year we called it a list.
Yep.
Start your list.
Yep.
And I'm not making changes after each meeting because
No,
I think
we-
that gets me into trouble.
It did.
Yeah.
Put it on the list. We'll talk about
Yeah,
it
we'll just
later.
add to the list and then we'll.
If it's a definitive cut you hear, we're not expecting you to update. You can do a recap at the end of the term when we're talking about that potential list.
Diane, do you know if anybody else would potentially be looking for an assistant?
Talking about economic development, maybe
Right.
something that might make sense if you could put two positions
That's what
together.
I'm thinking.
One person to work two, and that way they get 40 hours, you get a better pool of people to draw from.
Exactly.
Is there another half that we are not seeing?
No.
Okay.
Other
There's
than the economic development, but that would only be from April to July.
Right, that's what, right. I
Okay.
mean, you could, if you wanted to do a full-time position.
But that changes drastically
It
the
does
benefit
with the
package.
benefits
Right.
and everything, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that if somebody else was looking for an assistant, we could share this one person, and then
We talked about that when we
Makes the
started the
pool
budget
larger.
process. We were going to have this look differently for some help with Lydia. So I think when we get to her budget, we might want to have that conversation again because there definitely is a need in this building for more help than what we have right now.
But it sounds like it's already split with two, because it wouldn't be just assessing, it'd be assessing and codes, right? It would be kind of two different
Yep.
departments at that
Yep.
point.
Try to keep Dennis in line. Yep.
Good luck.
it's a solid plan.
Yeah.
So if you had to be, obviously, later for the list.
Mhm.
What you got tonight?
Tonight, if I was making a decision,
Yeah.
if I hadn't, I'd say no.
Keep going. I just want to know.
I'd say yes.
I would say yes.
I'd say yes until I see the rest of the budget.
Okay, that's where we're landing.
Yeah, I would say yes, but to me, anytime you actually wanted a position like that, it'd be nice to see more of a defined job description of what that would be or what it would
And
detail.
if you
but-
could flush some of that out for that future discussion,
Yeah.
that would be perfect.
Further discussion as well, like Norman said,
have to see more of everybody else and wait more towards the end.
Okay.
Before we start thinking about hiring somebody else on, part-time or not.
We were pushed tonight on a yes or a no?
No.
Okay, so we got clear. We got 2 no's anyways right now, and the rest looking for more discussion to at least float the idea. Anything else for assessing? Thank you for the goals. What I would actually try to do is give us a way to be able to quantify it for the November timeframe so we can see how we did over that course of the coming year.
Okay. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. If you, do you wave your hand and I get not paying attention, Dot, by all means.
My comment would be in the 20-hour assistant, I think it would help her, but maybe we're going to be incurring a big expense by supporting the Lisbon emergency, and maybe it would be a good idea to put it off a year when we start collecting taxes from the properties being sold up in Lisbon and the, what is it, development up there, Premier Development.
Kelly Park.
Kelly Park, thank you. And
Yep.
wondering why the big increase in the medical insurance from 3,000 to almost 16, over 16,500.
Back on to
I'll take a field.
Yeah,
I'll take a field on
the medical
that. That
insurance.
is partially with the additional person plus
yes.
the benefit package is subject to what an individual may take. And what you're seeing in the budget is what is available.
It's a worst-case
town.
scenario for
Worst
that
case
expense.
scenario.
A couple of things that were mentioned in the description is that the 6% increase has been applied to the premiums during the first half of the fiscal year, and we have estimated a 9% increase in those premiums for the second half of the fiscal year. So that would build in those increases overall. So it's a pretty significant increase, but that's the way of the world with insurance right now, too.
And the other part to your question, Dot, that's why we're deferring this to a future discussion of the list to consider what the full package of what we're actually going to be voting on for a final budget before it goes to the town.
I understand, thank you.
Yeah, no, so, absolutely. Thank you for coming in, sir.
I may not be much out, my computer's dead.
Is it the plug?
But we can start anyway.
On strike.
Technology?
It's not working.
Yeah.
That maybe sums
The-
up
the
our whole
iron-
technology budget right there.
The irony.
It is a conversation Norman wanted to have, so
Yeah, I was going to say,
how we doing?
the irony of Ryan's laptop being dead is not lost on me at this point. It's pretty good stuff right there.
Well, we'll restart it and see what happens.
Yeah.
When in doubt. But
That's all right.
you want to start goals again?
Please.
I mean, essentially the network and server software, and especially Office and all that stuff is currently being upgraded. Also to bring on the PD to the Lisbon ME domain, so that way the PD email and everything will all be housed here as an Exchange server. Really, the next few years, the need is just to continue with workstation replacements as necessary. We basically try to take a list of the PCs we currently have in use with those users, and anything that's out of warranty we try to replace first based on a priority need. We did a good chunk this year, and recommendation was to keep the budget pretty much the same and keep carrying that forward for the next year.
Do we have a refurbishment and life cycle schedule of all equipment?
We're trying within 5 years, roughly, based on, because we generally get the initial, I think they're generally a 3-year warranty, and then we extend it to 5, depending on what we have going on. But
Now, I know that we've added new players in the form of Munis and other software that we brought on board, and that may require some upgrades to the systems that we have, or in some cases, if we have older equipment, then they may not be able to be upgraded, and then we'd have to replace those machines. Is that something we've done an assessment as we brought Munis on?
I would defer to Lydia on that.
Okay.
Yes. As those needs have arisen, we've been working them into the current budget.
We found our machine stacked up as we were going through this. I know we've had some tripping points, and I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm just trying to put this out there so we can all understand what it is that might be some of the holdups with getting this implemented.
We've had to restructure the way the front does their computers. They went from the network part of it is lost on me, but essentially they have individual computers now. We've had to buy new printers,
Okay.
some scanners, that kind of thing. So there has been some stalls with that, with equipment-wise,
But so that's, and again, it's not so much about focusing on the stalls, it's about understanding that the limitations of the existing equipment that we had, and the fact that when we made this, when the previous recommendation was made by the previous department head to move forward on this, that probably wasn't brought and fleshed out appropriately and brought to council. And I think it's important that we talk about that here, because I don't want the burden to fall on you to be the one that's left holding the bag with that, but also to make it a point. 'Cause we're going to get to a line item here with Munis that's going to get very ugly. We're all going to look at it and be like, holy smokes, that's the commitment of resources from the taxpayer, and we're still sitting here trying to talk about where we are at in a migration, when I think what we were told was going to happen and that we were all ready to receive that, and what is actually happening are two different things.
Right.
So, and it's because we didn't adequately kind of explain, or maybe it wasn't explained to us, what we needed for systems resources minimums, so that we could have better prepared for that, had that equipment all ready to roll when Munis came in here, rather than the opposite. And please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've gathered for info on this, so I just want to make sure that I'm reading it right. Thanks.
As far as I'm concerned, he has it materially correct. I mean, it's a fair assessment. It hasn't been a direct line to here. It's putting the resource together to be able to get to the end game, to be able to realize the end result here. Well, again, I use the same example as assessing. What do we need to do in technology to be able to move forward? What operationally needs to happen for something as large as the financial software package that we're talking about? That is the number one item on here. The 272 versus last year's budget. It's my understanding there was an issue in the number for last year's budget. So why don't you guys bring us up to speed of what we actually pay for to get an understanding of what that number represents this year?
Well, I'll start with in the current budget we're in right now, the Munis portion of that, I misbudgeted the amount. I only budgeted $40,000, and I don't know why. That's all I did, but that's all I did. I know it says $87,000 there, but it ended up being $40,000.
Right. That was exactly. If you looked at last year's equivalent, we were given a binder that had actually 191. What stood off the page is the fact that that is not what I'm remembering. Why are we looking at a $23,000 increase this year? There's a problem in
this current budget.
This current budget that is more reflective of where we stand.
Right.
That was where. What the hell? I thought we were getting out of some of these arrangements, not seeing the increase.
And I don't know what I did. I looked back through my notes, and I cannot figure out why I backed that back to 40. It went back to the way it was the year before. And we did get the amount down on Munis because we did away with some of the modules. So that's why it didn't end up being 87 anyway. That's why it's down to 63,272, and then the sewer side pays for the difference.
Okay. Why don't you just take us through here and tell us what those, in layman's terms, what's the full service support for the 46,380?
That's our contract with Roundtable Technologies to provide all our support, our server monitoring, the virus protection, all that sort of stuff. It's the environment. It's the support of the environment in the day-to-day. Whenever we have an issue, if we can't fix it in-house, and we put in a ticket with Roundtable. It could be something as simple as a printer not communicating with a PC or whatever it is. They take care of all that stuff for all the town municipal operations as well as the PD. So all that's wrapped into that 146,380 per year.
Is Roundtable, in your opinion, doing an adequate job for that level? With the
Yes,
needs-
based on what we've paid in the past and what we got for quality of service in the past from other vendors, I think Roundtable has done as well, if not better, than others. And their price was, when we went throughout to bid, their price was considerably less.
That's what I remember of the bid, but
Was it a 2-year or 3-year? It wasn't a year-to-year contract on that one.
I honestly
I'm not gonna
don't
hold you to it.
recall. It may be one of those that automatically renews in October or whatever it was. I honestly don't remember.
When we get farther down into we'll beat the bushes if that's
Yep.
really necessary. Sounds like you're giving them a pretty good bill of health, and I have no reason to believe not.
Yeah, I mean, they've had their hiccups, and Nick, who's our direct contact, and he's basically our I don't know, representative, had admitted they've experienced some growing pains in the last several months just based on the sheer volume of work that they currently have. And I mean, they're no different than this operation is here. They don't have enough people to be able to do all the work that's necessary. They've recently, he just mentioned at the last department head meeting, are outsourcing some of their lower level IT stuff. And what's going to happen is there'll be a chat feature that's going to be on each individual user's PC. If they've got an issue, my email won't, I can't get my email, that simple stuff. It's click on it, you'll have immediate access to someone instead of putting in a ticket, waiting for them to flush through the ticket system based on priority order, yada, yada, yada. So I think that based on the way it was described, the individual users will see much more immediate response moving forward based on some changes they're making on their end, because they realized, they have to be able to provide, additional support, and some of the stuff is just taking too long. But in general, I mean, everyone, and part of it is their staff they're they're more of the higher end, people than my printer doesn't work type of thing. So.
You just answered my question, all not answered, but segue nicely to my next question. I'd like to see it, because we're filing tickets with them on stuff that doesn't get resolved in-house. And I know that they're going to keep a log of that, and I know that we've been on at least with a couple of years with them now. So is it possible to get them to give us a ticket dump of every ticket we've ever done with them so we can look at trends?
Yep.
That's what I'm interested in that. I'm interested to see how many password resets we did versus printer, and then kind of take that. We can kind of parse that out pretty quickly and figure out, are we low-end IT level stuff that we could be doing in-house? I'm not saying that this isn't a fair number.
Still a huge number, though.
It is a huge number. So what I'm saying is if we find a way that we're finding it's password resets and printer stuff, all stuff that could be handled by boots on the ground here, and maybe somebody who's a part-time resource to us, and then could be a shared position. And I'm just spitballing. Yep. But it's worth looking at those tickets and see what our trends are.
I'm quite certain that they can even provide that level analysis for you, because we've received reports from them in the past that shows, whatever item you want to see broken down.
Anything you can do, and I know you stepped out, and I appreciate you coming here tonight. I know that you moved on. Thank you. So anything that we can do to get that done, and even if it's simply just giving me the contact information, or Diane or whoever, somebody to be able to reach out to that contact point and start moving that ball forward. So it sounds to me there'll be a couple of quick clicks, and I'll get it back in an afternoon or so from them.
Yep. Sweet. Diane has contact for them.
We even talked, we had a meeting with Nick, and he was willing to, once Ryan left, if he had to, he could place somebody here in the building, because they all work remotely.
Right.
And have a body here in the building to address needs, but also work on other people too if we didn't have anything going on.
Beauty of working.
And that's all part of that 46,380.
Well, if we can just get that
I'll get
ticket dump,
I will get that.
so we can identify trends, that would be ideal.
Yep.
Thank you.
and I am very much on board with that thought process, because I'm looking at this as a segue into, okay, our resident IT person that's designated, how are we dealing with this now that you're off to greener pastures? I get that, but there's a learning curve. What's the exposure that's not in this 46, in your opinion, to pass it on?
No, I mean, honestly, it's most of the stuff people got tired of hearing it. I mean, invariably it was, did you restart your computer?
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, and honestly, as my responsibilities here changed over the years, I spent more often than not, I was much quicker to say, put in a ticket instead of even trying to accomplish the
So
stuff.
in your opinion, they're addressing the needs and putting a local resource in to be able to make us comfortable in that is
right. I mean, the
adequate
biggest
in
thing
your
that I've
opinion?
dealt with in the last probably 6 months has been when they upgraded, made the first leap, because you couldn't go directly from as old as we were with
Right.
Exchange up to the newest one, was resetting everybody's phone the next day so that way they could get back and remote connect to, I mean, it was, everybody that had a smartphone was just going around with them and showing them how to do it. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's there's some stuff that needs to be done on a daily basis, or not a daily, but a weekly basis associated with Trio, and depending on how that all shakes out with Munis, I mean, it's, and Trio may be changing too, and you may not have to do that, even that aspect of it, but at least 1 or 2 mornings a week before everyone got here, I'd have to do a compact and repair on the system, just so that way, because that was what you had to do with Trio. I mean, it's old.
Right.
And their software is going to be changing as well. So, I mean, depending on how everything flushes out with your Munis/Trio.
Closer to what Munis is actually doing through this service as a software provider. So you're paying a subscription versus what we currently have for an arrangement now, is my understanding.
Is that why we don't see anything on this list for Trio? In a sense?
It's in there. It's under the, it's in that,
It's Harris.
Right.
It's on the Harris.
71, yeah.
That's a moving figure right now.
17.8.
Till we figure out what's going to come online from Munis and what we really need from Harris.
But we know it's never going to go away, totally, right?
No, because we're going to keep the motor vehicle package and we're going to keep the assessing package.
So we're always going to have it at some level, and I guess the question
Right,
would be
and
is
cash
when
receipting because of the motor vehicle, yeah.
they actually migrate into a newer system, and does that number actually change? And at that point in time, are you beneficial to have one system in-house or actually have 2 systems, you mean? I mean, that's...
Well, that's
a hard
Trio.
discussion.
I mean, that's why we ended up with Trio the last time, was because
Yeah,
the firm that we were working with was much too quickly. They required us to pay for an upgrade.
Yeah.
And that was why we ended up looking elsewhere, because it was
I don't think so.
significant.
I think you can do it through that. I can
Trio is
confirm
cheap.
to
I mean,
resources
in
treasury and tomorrow if you need to.
municipal software business,
It's
Trio
one
is cheap.
module. But
Yeah.
it's one more module. We're not paying for 2.
If we're keeping the motor vehicle through Trio or Harris, do we have to have the cash receipting? Is that what they told you? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay.
We'll verify that, though.
Okay. Let's
No,
continue down.
they specifically said you had to. You can't cash receipt a motor vehicle transaction without it. You have, in order.
So you can't use Harris,
Okay.
use Munis's cash receipting?
Not for motor vehicle, no.
But that's the one that had the bunch of, I don't know if it's been proved, but I remember hearing specifically during the choosing of systems, that was the biggest sticking point, was the motor vehicle with Munis was the one that was the most troublesome out of all of them.
That's what I've heard. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Experience
same
one way
way. So I don't know, I'm sure that they've heard it too, and they've worked hard to try to shake some of that stink
you
that
still-
got
you-
associated with that, but.
You still have your contact in Brunswick, right?
But it's really
Now I have
tough.
another
I mean,
We have another one too. So the fact is, he has a homework assignment, because that's my leverage there, is that it's not, there's a reason we're still using Trio in Lewiston.
yeah, I mean, and that's the hardest thing, that when I look at this budget, again, I wasn't familiar with it before, but I mean, even in an industry like ours, I mean, the last couple of years has actually determined one of the biggest time stealers throughout the day is working with multiple programs and integrating one into the other and actually trying to support 2. To me, it's totally ridiculous that we actually have 2 software systems, and especially if one is actually going to be migrating later on. I think in a short period of time, we're going to have to make a choice. I mean, it's just very difficult to expect an employee to actually be totally proficient in 2 different systems as they change. I mean, because everything changes every day. I mean, so again, that's just a point from like our industry in the last couple of years. They just found the biggest time stealer throughout the day is actually working with multiple software programs and having a technician. Forget about the one technician been there forever, but actually having a new technician come in or a new employee and trying to train them on 2 separate systems to kind of achieve the same goal at the end of the day, that is really tough. So again, I feel your pain. I mean, it's one of those things where, and especially for the employees. So I don't know, I guess I'm not sure how you fix that, but it's just, if Trio's never going away, and Trio's integrating to be similar to what Unis is, I don't know where that gives you for Unis long-term, whether or not it's actually a smart investment or not to be loaded up into it. But again, I think that's a discussion that's way beyond my pay scale, so.
Continue on down the list.
Yeah.
Backup is what?
Backup is just what it sounds.
Daily backups, right? Tritech,
Monthly.
Pete, Tritech is what we use for reporting software for police and fire?
I'm going to back up on,
Sure.
backup also includes disaster recovery protocols, right? Is that where all of everything lives in the event that we couldn't come here, that's where everything is, so we could pull it back up?
Yes.
Yeah. From a networking
It's in the
standpoint.
cloud. It's
Yeah.
backed up here and then it's uploaded. But we've never actually done a true test and set up shop someplace else.
We've never done okay, and that's good, that answers my question. Is a disaster recovery protocol built into this budget anywhere for technology? Or does that fall under another line somewhere in the budget?
Now, it would be a matter of setting up a computer someplace and dumping the files to it.
But we don't have anything like that, right? That needs to happen. I don't know what umbrella you want to put it under, but that's just me saying it. For us to sit here and not have a viable disaster recovery in the event something went south, we better than that. I know that we've talked about it multiple occasions. So we have to stop talking about it and start moving.
This is just me thinking in that regard. Is that we have two different offices. We have this one and we have the school department. Why can't we do a reciprocal arrangement and actually have our backup be over there and theirs over here, and just designate a PC to make that happen for at least discussion purposes and try to flush those details out.
I think that working together is not a terrible idea, because ultimately, at the end of the day, if we're looking at bringing resources up to bear, especially if it's a natural disaster of some type, that is eventually going to be that being the gym, is going to be the rally point, because eventually we'll get a generator there, and that will be the place. So I think we have to talk about if we needed to bring basic functions online so we could make sure that we had to do just the bare bones to keep operational with the town, what that would look like, what resources we would need, can we do it out of laptops, and who are our critical personnel to be able to get them to fire up first. I mean, we're just spitballing here, but I think we need to go from talking phase to planning phase, and that become a budgeted item.
Sure. The fact is, like I said, I know we have two different physical locations that we have that. Let's just open up that dialogue for disaster recovery.
Perfect.
Tritech that's reporting for police and fire?
Yes.
PD recording and Oxford recording? What's the difference?
The Acorn software is what they have, is their archived software, I believe. And then we transitioned to Oxford. I'll be honest, I don't know if both of them are required still. That may still be left over
Can you
from
make
last
it
year.
note? Because, again, archive is there. It's only for a certain period of time. We'll go
Right.
with the current. Right.
We made the transition last year, and that may just be one of those ones that carried over.
Okay. Miss,
So it's the Acorn one is the one.
The Acorn was the question mark, because
Yeah.
right now we're paying Oxford to record now.
Miss PD?
I don't remember. Diane asked me that one.
Can you find
I
out
think
from
that
Mark?
was that may have been the teletype or something along those lines. I can't. It was
Same question to Mark.
Yep.
What is that?
It was one that he removed. There should be, because it was one that we did at the last minute, and I just honestly don't remember the exact details, which is why it was labeled miscellaneous.
Okay. Harris, we already talked about. Eunice, we talked about. Assessing, that's new this year?
That was a request from Kathy for real estate online.
Yeah.
Through Trio.
The tax records online.
Okay.
We definitely need to get those tax records online so people can
It's
see
goal
that.
number one.
Something people have been complaining
Yeah.
about for years, and we need to do that.
Yep.
Especially where other towns
Okay.
that are
Yes.
so much smaller than us.
Everyone's way ahead of us on this. We're
Yeah.
really back of the pack.
All right. Mills for library. I'm familiar with that. Town hall streams. Nothing new there. That's this. Mitchell is same as last year.
Yep.
SimQuest, what do we get and how many copiers?
That's our service that we had a 5-year agreement on, I think. That's the big copier here, big copier at PD.
The lease purchase?
Yes.
When is that out?
I want to say that's up in 2 Septembers, not this one, but the next one.
Okay.
Is my guess.
Do we know how much of that was service versus purchase for the equipment?
I don't remember offhand, sorry.
The only reason being is we could go kind of the cruiser approach. If you purchase the copier and you're only paying for the maintenance, you're not paying for interest over the life of that 5 years associated with that, because copiers typically are about $5,000. It's not a significant amount of money, but when you do that kind of scratch times 5, it's 3 times that amount. So is it all service or not?
Brian, the question, like the all data, the Mitchell that they're using now in Public Works, is that used quite regularly, or?
I'm going to say not quite regularly. It is used, but certainly not on a daily basis.
It'd just be interesting. I mean, it's something we see in our industry quite a bit. It's actually the same service, and there's multiple companies out there right now that have some same service, and now they're actually getting to a point where you can actually buy a much cheaper subscription if you're only using it so many hours a month versus it's set up for if a shop is actually using it, on the hour, every hour throughout the day. And then there's another place that may only use it once or twice a month or once or twice a week. There's actually different levels of subscription you can use now. It's based upon hours versus the idea of just, this is actually like the granddaddy of all accessibility, which is fine if they're using it, but if they're not, basically all data would be is if you got a piece of equipment out there and you're trying to figure out how many quarts of oil it takes.
Right.
It replaced the books
that
they were buying every year.
Yeah. You can make a general note on that one just to see when the dust settles, is it the best value for what we're needing for
it's very possible. If they're only using it occasionally, you can actually get a much cheaper subscription yearly.
Yep. Cool. And we apologize in advance. We were trying to pick your brain for knowledge, knowing fully well.
There isn't much there, so.
I think you undersell yourself that far.
You know what changed all data today is the phone. Most technicians say, Google, tell me how many quarts of oil this holds, and it actually tells you in 2 seconds. So basically, you're getting the same information you're paying someone else to look up for you.
Right.
So, it's a crazy world, right?
The other one was the computer equipment. You already talked about the 5-year plan to try to.
Yep.
We cut that, then that just actually puts you behind.
Well, and you're talking. This is all town office, all PD, rec. All departments. So we did 13 computers this year.
Your successor has an idea of where you left off in the process to know what you would ultimately be looking, or is it built as we go?
Is there a schedule in place?
The list is usually what happens is come budget time, Nick and I would sit down, he'd print off the list of all the workstations with all their service tag numbers and expiration dates, blah, 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 blah. And then we'd talk about the ones that were the oldest, and then we talk about whose they were. And General Assistance has one that's ancient, but based on the amount that it's used, never really rose to the top of the list. What we're going to do there is take one of the old, one of the thin clients that we'd taken from the front counter because that environment didn't pan out, and we're trying to distribute those to some of these lower used workstations.
Just because it's used from somebody that has a little more usage doesn't mean it's out of the system. It goes to a lesser priority.
Right. Yep, and then those frequent flyers usually rise to the top too.
Right.
Long-term end game should be looking at developing a life cycle that's automated so that they don't have to sit down and take time every budget cycle and say, here's this, here's that. It'd be like, whether it's a contracted person like we go with the Roundtable, and have that be part of their task, say, develop our life cycle, develop it for 3 years out or 5 years out or whatever the recommended equipment cycle is after they assess what our usage is. Then from there, it becomes a lot easier to manage budgets and looking at things because we already know in advance we're looking to replace X number of machines at this point in time. Down the line, we can start to build a budget based on that. Just a thought.
Agreed.
The only other flag I was going to raise on this budget was the public access channel. I don't know if that's something that needs to be negotiated with Great Falls again now, but when we went to Town Hall Streams, we talked about in-house the idea of being done, but there's some folks that don't have a computer.
I think we should eliminate it. I do, and I think that what we could do is eliminate that line, and I would be A-okay with adding some of that, taking some of that money, adding a resource or two at the library to allow anybody who doesn't or maybe uses the public access television to watch, to give them the opportunity to be able to go to the town office and have, you have 2 machines down there? Forgive me for dragging you into this.
No, 3 for adult public use and 1 for children.
Great, so if we were to add maybe 1 or 2 terminals that were basically just simply internet browsers, nothing fantastic as far as cost-wise, it opens up a few more resources. It allows folks who maybe don't have the internet at home and have been relying on that stream to be able to go into the library and watch that at any point in time. Is there a restriction on how long they can sit? Want to make sure I...
1 hour, so we have to set up a little bit differently. This is for this use rather than Facebook.
That wouldn't be too much of a hardship, though, would it?
No.
I mean, thoughts on that? I think it beats dropping $5,000 on finding out that we got. I would like to know what Great Falls can give us for numbers. How many people are actually watching these?
Yeah,
And
just
seeing how much
Well, my
bang
only
for the buck.
concern is those that can't get out and about.
they won't make it to the library. I mean, that's the hardest thing, you know.
I understand.
And I'm not sure if they can give us a head count, but you would hate to turn it off and find out that we have, you know, a few hundred people. I mean, there are people that approach me that do watch it on TV pretty regularly that actually, you know, don't miss much. So
I know some younger generations that actually watch it on TV too.
No,
So
I hear you.
just because it's not convenient to get out here to, you know,
No,
especially if you have
I
kids.
understand that. I'm just coming at you
Yeah.
where I think it's a lot of money to be spent, and if we're not getting our bang for our buck, and I'm not trying to exclude anybody who maybe doesn't have the internet. I'm just trying to say our job is to look at everything.
oh, absolutely.
And so I'm not trying to eliminate a population at all. I'm just trying to say, is it the right use of our resource? So that's just my thought. I know you guys are all going to have yours, and welcome.
I just think for transparency that we might want to consider keeping it just for that population that doesn't get an opportunity. I don't want to exclude anybody.
Shut it off for a couple minutes, see what you get for response, right?
I guarantee if we do a trial run and people don't like it, Diane's phone will get lit right up, and our email boxes will fill up.
I love where you live, because I've done that with pagers, but we're talking how much I don't. Just cancel it and see who complains. But,
I mean, I think you should at least, we haven't had a discussion with them. I mean, I broached it a little bit with Phil and Brian, but I mean, we haven't had a discussion about contract, especially since they're not doing, I mean, it's not being done the same way now even.
Sure, if they come back with a much lower price, then I'd be more than happy to listen.
I mean, those discussions haven't happened.
Yeah.
Maybe it just needs to, that's all.
I think that they realize that their days are numbered as far as living in their old contract. Especially with streaming, I love the light up there. I love the fact that the majority of the folks, and I realize that there's some segment that will always be, I'm not going to own a computer, and that's just not who I am, and that's fine. But I think that public access in Great Falls has to understand that as the priority shifts and people learn to different ways to get their media, that they need to adapt their pricing accordingly. That if not as many people are demanding it that way, then we shouldn't pay premium prices for it. But that's just, yeah, great, let's do what they have to say. I like that idea.
any cuts that anybody's recommending to any line item on this discussion? Technology. I think we talked about future discussions for the garage software, the PD softwares, the Great Falls discussion for later.
I think it's a great idea. When Norm had the idea of finding out what we're actually paying for the $46,000 over a course of a 2-year period, whether it's actually, stuff that actually needs a high level. I mean, to me, it actually bothers me when they're saying they're going to start outsourcing some of the low-level stuff, which is fine. But to me, now we're just paying a second party to actually offset to a third party that we may be able to just contract with in the first place. You know what I mean? For half the money. That's one of the things where anytime you have someone else.
That's a huge red flag for me. If they can afford to farm out our work to somebody else, and they're still making money, because they ain't farming out to break even.
No.
They're farming out to make money. So that means that, to me, tells me, and for them to share that, it's enlightened and very brave on their part. I don't think I would have probably come clean and said that. I would have said, no problem, we can pick up whatever you have, but I don't think, for them to say that makes me definitely concerned about, it's low-level stuff, which means if it's low-level stuff, I've made some notes here, we could hire a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 skill-level help desk person to support that. In-house here, we're talking $30,000 to $32,000. It's $12,000 to $14,000 in savings immediately. That's just me using some very narrow tunnel vision focus, assuming that it's going to be password resets and kind of, like you said, have you turned it off? Have you turned it on again? Let's check the cables real quick. All stuff that can be done in a matter of 10 to 15 minutes and get that resource back online.
I mean, if 40 to 50% of that $46,000 is that level of stuff, and we're actually paying, again, it's just one of those things where I think you gotta look at the whole picture and actually see what's practical, but anytime someone starts outsourcing, you just kinda wonder where that goes, that's all.
Right.
Again, I'm not hearing any definitive cuts, but I know town manager's been given 6 action items associated with this discussion, so I think it's been beneficial to at least consider those topics that were heard. Anything else for technology?
I'd like to cut one that I wanted to cut way back, but we won't go there.
You can, that's what we're here for.
You just opened your mouth.
Yeah, that's right.
The whole Munis thing, I think that was a crock.
I think that's gotta be a long-term look at to see, you know, if Trio's not going away. I mean, I think it's ridiculous to have 2 services here, but again, I don't use it every day, so I don't really know, but it's one of those things where it is a big ticket on that line, you know?
Well, not only that, I mean, there were so many issues with it. We were told that certain things were going to be implemented by certain time frames, and I hear chirping. We're still waiting.
I think that we kind of talked about that earlier, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but some of our challenges were directly related to the fact that our equipment wasn't ready. It's not that Munis wasn't ready to pull the trigger on some things.
Right, but that's
our
something
equipment
that
couldn't handle.
We
So
should have been looking at way back when. We should have had our ducks in a row to make sure that we were able to use this type of technology before we actually signed on the dotted line.
well, I think that we can all point to the previous department head as the
Right.
one who chirped the loudest on what it was that was going to work for us there. And so, rather than look back, I think we're at that place where I think you got to look at Munis and say, what are we going to use it for? I know we've cut some of the modules out, so it's a different animal than what was presented to us. So let's take a long, hard look at it again and say, what are we doing? I know some of the challenges with Trio was that we weren't getting support. It's not like they were getting back to us. In some cases, they weren't even getting back to us on tickets that had sat for months, not weeks, not days, months. So that's no way to run a support, and I'm not comfortable with a piece of software that doesn't even have folks to come out
We're
and
having
support it.
challenges with Trio right now because we tried to get the new computers in certain departments, Lydia's, and the Trio won't even work on it. We don't know what's going on with that.
And you're not getting support from them to get that up and implemented.
I don't know where we stand on that, do you?
It's between Trio support and Roundtable.
Yep.
They're speaking stuff I don't.
As it should be, though, as it should be.
Yeah.
You should be able to focus on what your tasks are here and be able to hand that off. Now, so I think that we got to go back and, as you said, Cass, let's take a look at all the line items again and figure out what we're trying to do and best efficiencies.
I
But
just don't think
I guess
two
I'll ask
different
the
technologies.
direct question of Lydia. To your point, is it still better to move forward with the current approach with Munis?
We have a contract,
I understand.
so
Is it you did that's an official term for a dodge. Is it better to actually move forward, or to explore what it actually takes to get out of this contract?
How far are we in this contract now? I mean, is it a 5-year contract, 4, 10?
7 year.
7 year, what, 3 years into it right now?
This will be our 3rd year, I think.
3rd year into it?
One we're starting, yeah.
there's proponents for both of it. I mean, Munis, when we get it up and running, offers way more reporting capabilities, tracking, that kind of thing. They have a much bigger support system, so tickets won't sit for months.
Knowing what you know now, with what you inherited coming into this shoes, is it better to move forward or try to see what it takes to actually get out of this contract?
If I knew what I knew now, when I first started, I would have said get out of it. For the amount of work that I have to put into it, that others have to put into it, that's one of the reasons that it's taking so long too, is I just don't have the time to build this system like apparently I have to do.
And be a finance director.
So,
And be a finance, and do your job. I mean,
so
that's
my
hard,
question is that when Munis was, put out to the table for us to consider, the whole reasoning was because of
Efficiencies.
with Trio, we weren't getting tickets, but how efficient is Munis if we're, like you said, people are still, you can't get up and going. We're
Trio's
in the
not
same.
going anywhere, so you're still dealing with
Right.
the same thing. I mean, if Trio
In
was
the same
actually just
boat.
going away, then you can say, well, we didn't get good service, we put them away, but you're still keeping Trio, so if you don't solve the service as far as for their backup, you're just beating your head against the wall anyways.
Well,
I
right.
mean, but
presentation,
Yeah.
just to kind of go back to this, the
Price?
presentation of the Munis software at the time, all software was being presented. it was made very clear that Trio was going to be sticking around to do the front end of the house for registration anyway. That was very clear, made very clear.
Absolutely,
That wasn't going away because of that was the one Munis aspect that was explained very clearly wasn't going away. So if we take that and we say, if that's the only thing we're using that for right now because it's a better experience for everyone, then we live with that. The Munis piece, when you talked about the reporting, I think that was some of the things that we wanted to see more of, more robust reporting to be able to come up with more detailed information to get a better understanding of what we had for revenue than we do now, and then also the support piece of it as well. So obviously we've talked about what the things are that are going to come to us and help us and benefit. The other side of that too is we paid 7 years, but then after that, how long were we in Trio? I'm trying to remember here. How long we've been in Trio?
Forever.
Man, these questions.
20 years?
No.
No, it hasn't been that long. When I started on council, we were still doing paper, so.
Okay.
You know, and that wasn't that long ago.
Trio's probably, my guess is going to be
Rodney?
09.
Okay. So we've been 10 years in. So the idea was, and I think my thought was that we would 7 years in the contract, and then we'd be able to get another 5 to 6 out of it after that minimum, where we're not paying any contract anymore, and that would just be basically support anytime we needed them.
Your licensing, though,
No,
is going to
no.
be significant.
This is software as a service. There is no way you are not getting out of paying them something.
Oh no,
Subscription.
and I don't have the contract in front of me, but I remember it being peanuts after we got past year 7. It wasn't significant.
There's a drop, but not peanuts.
Well, I should say peanut. It would be far less than what we're looking at right now. And
Right, but then what issues are we looking at when year 7 comes around, when that does drop? How many more updates are we going to have to do? How many, I mean, we're not the only community who has to use software, so what are other communities looking at?
Same question
Yeah.
to you. Is it better to move forward or not? Because I know what we hired you for, and I need to leverage that.
Yeah, it is.
It is better to move forward?
Yeah. I think we're on the cusp of Trio not being functional. It is now, and we're making it do, but there's going to come a point where it's not going to be enough, and it's not going to be, and I foresee those other modules eventually going to Munis as well if they don't keep up.
I guess my next question would be does this budget reflect the idea of getting everything we need to make that happen within a reasonable amount of time? Do you actually have the technology, the support, the backup, not stressing you out? The idea, does this budget reflect what you need to get Munis going? Then if it doesn't, then it needs to if we're going to keep it. And if it doesn't, then we'll just waste spinning our wheels.
My exact note right here is
I need to leverage what we hired you for.
My exact note right here is what resources are needed, because you said move forward, so I put move forward. What resources are needed to fast track this now? So I know, I put that note there because I know exactly what that looks like. It's got to be some sort of resource, and I know I've been banging the IT position here.
That's my point.
Over and
That
over again.
46,000. What are we getting out of that would help towards that? I realize 2 totally different animals, but
We need to find you the resources that you need so you can do your finance director's job and oversee this project management of Munis implementation, but you need the grunt work to get it done. And one more thing I wanted to go back to before, I don't like to look back on this, but I remember point blank when the previous, I almost said his name, the previous finance director.
I said not to get personal.
I know, that's why I'm trying to follow the rules. When the previous finance director said that he was waffling between having them do the legwork for us and him doing it himself. And in a way I understood he was going to have them do it, but now I understand that was cut from so that's why we're in this kind of place where you're being asked to kind of fill that in.
I don't think that there
That's
was
part of the problem that we're running into.
Right.
It actually wasn't even, I'd been here for a couple of months where I sat down with Munis and specifically told them, I don't have the time and or the expertise to do this.
Right.
You do it.
Right.
Oh yeah, we'll do it.
But that's not
And
the
it's
case.
still coming back into me.
The initial kickoff meeting, Munis sold a bill of goods. When I got rolled into this project towards, after it had already been approved to move forward, they had the first kickoff meeting, and it, in all intents and purposes, appeared that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to just come to you for this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And
We're building it.
that is not what you
So it sounds
saw.
like
Can we bring them in? What I mean by that is, I know you've had probably
We're
discussions
having a meeting Thursday.
with the
Would
Munis
you like
folks.
to be there with us?
What time?
9:30?
It's at 9:30.
9:30?
9:30 this Thursday?
You need to
I'll be
make
there.
sure that you have more than a salesman sitting in that room.
But
So
no,
it's-
this is top level. There should be
You're
somebody
getting
from
that,
their
right?
senior level
You need to
of
have more than a
implementation.
a salesperson sitting in that room.
Who's our?
Who's your
pro-
guy
Who's the top project manager? Is it?
or gal?
We don't, that's, each module has its own project manager. I've dealt with 3 different people on 3 different modules.
There's a person that oversees all of that, though.
Yeah, there's a senior manager for those folks.
Find out
I've
who.
been told to go to the salesperson. That's the only other.
Okay.
I don't want
so-
to overstep you. This
Do we
is
have
your
the
baby to
money
run, but
for,
you should
work
be banging the
meeting with
drum
all of
for a
us?
senior implementation manager there and say, I'd like to go ahead and talk to you about some of the challenges that we're having here. I know you
Okay.
got 90,000 things on
Yeah,
your
I
plate.
know.
I'm sorry to add another.
Redirect to bring this back here. I'm hearing the fact that this budget doesn't actually reflect the resources that you need to be able to move this forward, correct?
What would you
Number
need?
number one on your list for that future discussion
Yeah.
is we address that.
The resources, yeah.
I mean, what would that be? Would that be
Time
people,
and expertise.
that would actually be someone in boots on the ground here helping you do it, right?
Could we jettison Trio if we were able to implement the Munis? And I understand there's a warts and all, and I know you have some misgivings because we've heard about it, but with the front end. So to make Trio, is Trio always going to be a part of what we do? Is it only the front end of the house for the registration that we're using that for right now?
The assessing is gonna be the big question, because there aren't that many assessing packages out there. Who do you use for assessing? 'Cause you've got Trio and you've got Vision, and I'm not sure what Munis has, but I don't know of anybody that uses Munis.
Sure, I'm not saying we got to go with them. I
But
just
I
wanted to
think
understand what
the
we're still
assessing part
tied
is
to
always
Trio
gonna be
for.
separate,
Yep. I just wanted to see.
which isn't a big deal.
Right.
Because they have a conversion, I mean, that's the assessing.
I'm just hearing that Trio is the biggest pain and the one that's least supported and eventually is going to put us in a spot where it's going to be catastrophic failure. So rather than wait for that, sounds like we're making the right move, but I want to understand out of what we've been paying for on this, if we had just 2 things, which I hear now, assessing and a motor vehicle, then we can get at least motor vehicle tied in if we get you the resources that you need to get that up and running. And then the assessing can be looked at on a case-by-case to decide what is the right software, because it doesn't sound to me like Munis has something for them. So we'd still be in a
At least I'm not aware
two
of
software
it.
type of world, but that software would be unique to one department only.
I would recommend you bring in Trio too, because they are, and I've learned of it from Bowden, there is an update coming from them. It's going to be a web-based software. I'd at least make sure you cross that T
That's
and
fair.
have that discussion with them as well, because from a dollars and cents standpoint, there's a reason why Trio's in 90% of the communities in the state of Maine.
I think it's perfect. Good, give them a chance to
Cost
compete.
is-
I would love them to come in and beat
But
Munis'
they've
price.
got lots of problems because of the manager's listserv. They all have the same problems as we have now, and I'm wondering if that's why they're moving to the
They're
web-based.
finally upgrading. This is, I mean, they're talking-
Finally.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were doing this 3 years ago when we were talking,
It'd be a different animal, yeah.
It might be. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think it's important to let them come in and compete. Let them come in and compete against. They know that we're with Munis on some of this stuff, and they realize that we're looking to maybe move towards that. See if they can come in and make us an attractive offer of some type. I don't know what
Just
that would
explain what they're doing, because like I said, I've only heard rumblings. I don't even know
Yeah.
the full details, so.
I would just think if we're gonna keep this in the budget, I mean, $63,000 is a lot of money. I mean, to me, we actually, if we're gonna keep it, we've already paid this for 2 years already, and it's kinda like having the best plow truck in town sitting there because no one knows how to drive it. I mean, it doesn't do us any good at all. You mean, so, we either have to allocate the proper funds to get this rolling this year and not put the burden on you and let you do your job and oversee it. And if we can't afford to implement it, why are we having it? You mean, that's the key. But
Well, not only that, but with Trio, we have it for the front of the house for a reason, but you're saying that eventually we won't be able to use it, right?
I'm just based on my experience with Trio.
So what was the whole reasoning why we didn't have it in the Munis in the front of the house? Because they couldn't do it either, right?
Their product was worse.
Okay, so, I mean, like you just said, there's a reason why Trio's in most of the communities. I mean, it sounds like no matter what, if you're comparing apples to apples here, it sounds like no matter if you're with Trio or if you're with Munis, the help in both aspects isn't there. That was the whole reason why we went from Trio to Munis.
I agree.
So,
But the point that I would make in this is, it still comes down to me is the fact is we asked the question, we got the answer. It is still better to proceed moving forward with the resource. I'm not in the position to be able to micromanage. I am actually leveraging the staff that actually to be able to make that decision. That's where I'm living on that. And I asked the question, Cassie, because of the reservations that you had that night. I believe that we did get sold a basket of goods by somebody that didn't understand it at best, or two, trying to manipulate it. But done is done. I'm asking the same question to at least revisit it now.
So the next question I have is, piggyback what you had already said. What do you need to make it happen?
Time and expertise.
Okay.
And
so,
you'll work with Diane to be able to give us something to be able to address it on the list, to put this discussion to rest.
And just to be clear, part of my recommendation to move forward with it is the cost that it would cost the town to buy out the contract.
Right. I'm sure there's a lot of
Well, I
pleasant bills inside of that contract.
I mean, I would like to see what that would consist of.
We can look at that.
I mean, if we're going to compare, if we're going to look at Trio, we're going to look at Munis, I think we need to look at how much it's going to cost us to bail if we need to.
Okay.
And if you're qualifying it, I'm cool with exploring that. Because, again, we're leveraging, we know what you were hired for, and we got a good vibe going. I don't need to have something else going off the rails.
I just think we need to be conscientious of the cost that it is costing the taxpayers to have two systems, and how much is it really being efficient with what, I mean, if you're saying that it's hard to actually accomplish what you need to on a daily basis, regardless of what system you're using, I mean, if I'm going to have the same problems with two of them, one's 50,000 and one's 10, well, doesn't really make much of a difference. It's just cost at that point, so I'm going to go with the 10.
Anything else with technology? I'm not asking you. I'm done with that. I'm done asking you. Anybody else with anything on technology? I know it's, and again, I think it was a good dialogue for a lot of different topics.
I think we should have another workshop on just technology sometime this spring here once we're through the budget. I think there's a lot of issues still in the air that we're going to need to discuss, so
Okay.
we should plan that out.
I don't think that's a bad recommendation
It
at all,
is
Mark.
spring and the budget doesn't get.
Well, when we're done, then okay.
Yeah, no. We don't have many days.
Your season is wrong.
Right.
Yes.
Good thought, though.
Buildings, sir.
You wanted goals again? I guess I indicated the biggest issues moving forward were the integrity of this building, which we needed to study, being that wing.
There's none of that in this budget.
Pardon?
There's none of that in this budget.
It may still be out of this current year's budget, that cost to have
Okay.
engineering done.
Okay, that's fair.
That's something that,
You mean the gaps between the inside
Yeah.
and outside walls changed during the season, you mean?
it didn't get much worse this year, but it's still significant.
That's awesome.
385 Lisbon Street demolition was another one that's on the list. We tried to negotiate a little bit with the contractor that did the demos for the other buildings in town. The person that was in charge there, Rose, has moved on as well. So, and I've already talked to Dennis a little bit about it. That's something that just needs to be
Call Gary directly.
taken up. Right.
St. Laurent directly.
Dennis knows who to talk to.
Yeah.
Well, at least
Yeah,
it's on his list.
Yeah. You're right, because Matt now works for Glidden. Right.
There was one request the PD made with respect to an overhang for their entrance door, and quite honestly, I figured if we were doing one, maybe able to incorporate some stability for that end of the building as well, to add one over the employee entrance for this side of the building as well. And then still need to have some sort of discussion or a plan for, and I think that was going to be the major goal, was to just get a long-term HVAC plan for this building. We've been budgeting Band-Aids for the last couple of years in the event that we've had a heat exchanger that's failed. But there are newer technologies now, and it'd be nice to get a plan for maybe improving the HVAC components here. Once the energy efficiency program went through, comfort level complaints increased significantly. And I think that that's somewhere, some other new technologies, you may be able to provide better heating and cooling in different spaces based versus just this system. And then the last item was library modular shelving, which was, I think will be a major component of tonight's discussion for this budget.
So we had put on the list for unassigned fund balance, the library shelving and carpet for one, but the police department and town office, the overhangs, the 8,000, so that's not in here now, right?
What's your number?
I see it right, I see them.
I think the only thing I took out of this budget was the library shelving. I don't,
We're talking the last item, the 5,400 buildings.
no, the
5340.
5340. And then we had the transfer station doors and transfer station loading dock. So between the two of those, three items, it came to 18,000.
That you took out of this?
You're saying you removed those?
We talked about it, but I don't know if we had it in there to begin with. Do you
It's in
remember?
the budget binder, but it's not in your final.
Yeah, it's in the budget binder, I'm looking at it, that's why I
But
asked.
it's
So is
not
it part of that 5340? Because if it is,
budget binder it is, but on your final report, you've taken them out.
Is there many items
Right.
that are like that in this, through this, that are
Yeah,
actually listed here but not on, that's on the other one?
yes.
There is a lot of
It's
items?
not a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got
Okay.
this in your miscellaneous.
Okay.
But it just doesn't add up because the 60,000,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's like something wasn't in there to begin with.
It looks like
I
we
only
left them in there
reduced-
because we took out, it's
Everything's in there
95,000
originally, and
in the budget binder, and it's 35 on your,
So maybe the
so everything else is still
that
in there.
18,000 is part of that 35
we talked
that's
about
left?
taking it out of
Yeah.
out of the reserve, but we also talked about leaving it with the possibility of even maybe some of them being done this fiscal year, and then revisiting the discussion on the shelving.
So if we fund that 18,000 through fund balance or through current year budget, then I can reduce this budget some more. Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
And that 18 grand is
guess
what
I
again?
That's the,
Ramps, ramp for the transfer station doors, and 8K for the overhang.
Right.
Fixes, right?
Ryan,
Have
does
we
it
had-
include, I noticed coming in PD the other night, soffit seems to be dropping down like something, water or something got in there on the front? Am I the only one seeing that? I don't know if it's,
You're talking about way out front? I couldn't tell you, I hadn't noticed that.
it's above HR, looking up that, I know you had all that snowbank that used to
Oh.
foam.
yeah.
It may
The-
very well have done.
That soffit is damaged or something to that effect, and I didn't know if it was just soffit, if there's something beyond it, more water problems, and that caught my attention.
Couldn't answer that question.
Dennis, look at it.
Can you
Yeah.
make that note? It was just coming in Tuesday night on last meeting, I think it was. So
I
I'm
mean,
hearing there's an $18,000 discussion possibly.
Yeah, if it's
Reducing
part
that-
of that 35 that's still in the budget, yes, and there's a possibility.
Possibly
yes.
fund balance or
Yep.
this year. I would like
Yep.
to.
Have we had anybody actually look at the idea of the entrances to see if, I guess the question is if it's just a roof or actually supported, I can't imagine that they would do an entrance with supporting, that would actually help offset the wall, but I guess I don't know what the base level or the base
No, I
problem of
just-
the
I mean,
wall
I-
is, yeah.
And it's, again, that was just
That's just throwing it out there.
theoretically, that if you've got something out there with a post in the ground, to me, it's gonna help.
Well, it depends if the post is frost level or not, right? But
Yep.
again, I mean, it's one of those things where I guess I'd want to know what the baseline problem of the wall is before I figure out how to put a Band-Aid on it to fix it. But I'm not, again, I mean, it's definitely an issue. It hasn't changed much over the years, but something's moving differently. But
I remember that discussion from prior discussions is I want to make sure that is at least addressed or on the radar. So I'd like that it's in the goals. I'd like to know that we flush something out on that to at least have a course of action to move forward on it.
my thought process at this point was that there's $55,000, just almost $56,000 balance in that budget line right now. And between the library shelving and the stuff that needs to be done here from an engineering standpoint, and Dennis, we talked about it a little bit, that may be a good idea to get those answers right away from a structural engineer in terms of the fix here, as well as what's going to be needed in addition to the actual cost to install the shelves to support them at the library. And that may be something that you could jump on right now and get that taken care of. At least have a design and a plan before you go and adopt the budget.
Okay.
And then the question is still, with the money that's there, if you can fix something. I mean, the items that were left, back to your shifting priorities potentially, but the electrical panel upgrades were the biggest next priority out of this current year's budget, which shouldn't be too terribly expensive, and I believe Dennis is already working on that part of it. But you've got a significant amount of money sitting there right now that could be used to help with these future projects.
And
And in the priority scheme associated with the 389 Lisbon, where does that stand in your demo?
That one we talked about, there was, out of the existing fund balance, the use of reserve for last year, or this current year, one of the items was the the Lisbon, E.T. Smith Hose Company floor. And that project came in significantly under what we originally budgeted. And I guess that's maybe where the gap is. We never did get a price for the cost of demo 385. But there's still additional roughly 15,000 that was designated for E.T. Smith that wasn't used, so it's available. And that was where the discussions were, let's find out what the demo's cost is going to be, and maybe you can take care of that right out of what we saved from E.T. Smith. So there's still a lot of balls in the air right now.
I guess the 55, I guess the question is, does that carry over from what we didn't use previous year? I mean, is that was something that was budgeted last year? I'm just kind of wondering where the 55 is actually still left from this year. Is that?
I'm not 100% sure if there was, because I was under the impression initially that it went from 50 to 70. Initial, am I looking at that right?
But you're talking about funds that are already available, right?
I'm saying that's what's in the balance right now. We didn't have,
for town
we
buildings.
didn't spend a lot on repair and maintenance of stuff this year because I got burned a year or so ago, and I went back to the way of, we're going to make it through the heating season, and then we'll go do all these other projects that people want to get done. Because that way, if something happened catastrophically in the wintertime, they're going to have to wait.
I guess the question is do we actually have to allocate as much money as we have for that if we already have some money that's already left over? I mean, because from what I'm hearing is some of these hot topics we can take off with the money that we already have sitting there, right? So that may bring that down to that 35,000 instead of what we have. So maybe that number's not that far skewed. The
biggest issue is going to be with that standpoint is getting everything spent before June 30th.
Well, we can carry it forward.
PO.
We know what we're gonna.
You've got it encumbered. You're good.
Yeah, we can carry it forward.
But the encumbrance has to have something tangible behind it. It's actually been
Right.
proved. It's gone out for bid.
That's what I'm.
You know, and I know you're driving to the same thing. I know that's what you meant.
One other question is the place that we're talking about demoing, is that the old Lisbon?
Yes.
And have we determined what the end game is to that property? I mean,
That was the question within the question. So thank you for
I mean,
asking.
if we are actually looking to sell that property after, to me, investing money in demo is not going to make that not worth any more. If you spend $7,000 tear it down, it's not going to add $7,000 in property.
Right.
If you're looking to sell it as it is.
Sell it with the barn, let it be somebody else's.
That's my own.
Correct.
You know.
I would say the same thing.
But
I mean, I'd rather.
But that's part of the
If we don't have a plan for it and we are looking to unload it, put for sale sign out front and see how it flies. We don't have to do anything. You're saving yourself.
Somebody may
$70,000.
want to come along on the Route 196 corridor there and apply for a little bit of CDGB money and do something with it. I don't know if that falls in that area, though.
Building's been a concern for a long time. I mean, it was threatening to fall over, 30 years ago, right? But it does lean. It just hasn't gone anywhere. But
Not yet.
if it's a danger, don't get me wrong. We need to do something with it. But if it's not a danger and we're looking to sell it, let someone else deal with it. But
that discussion's never happened.
Okay.
Are you looking to sell it or not? I mean,
This now.
Yeah.
Can you tell?
Yes. Put that on the next, or a future, find it,
April 3rd.
agenda. What is the discussion for that fate of that property?
Do you know what the condition of the building is as far as safety?
It has been secured, everything has been turned off to it, the roof is leaking, ceiling's falling in, mainly just from water damage, but
Are we storing anything there right now? Is the building
there
empty?
may be some junk in there still, but
Yeah,
Not
time,
much.
Not much.
the
It's pretty
important
empty.
stuff had been removed. I think
Okay,
all
good.
all
But
the
it-
screens for this building. are
It
removed.
wouldn't be considered a dangerous building by any aspect. Or is that
Point
more
you
of a
towards
dentist?
That's a dentist.
Field trip.
Well, I think that's something that definitely needs to be looked into as well to see if it's even
Right.
viable.
Part of the recommendation, what's
the end
what
game?
would staff's recommendation be for that property? And that becomes what they actually would act on at the next meeting.
Dennis can go down there and give us it's not there, but it's getting close, so we could, if we wanted
It's
to.
such a small lot, I just don't see any benefit to the town, but
It's still a buildable lot as far as square footage.
right, but I mean,
right,
from
yeah.
an actual municipal operations standpoint, I
No.
just don't see what benefit it would be. I know some of the fire
Who's the abutter? I mean, maybe
staff
they'd be
and
interested too.
the apartment
The
complex.
apartment complex.
Yeah. Is it White Pines?
No.
There's been
The other one, the retirement community.
Right.
Yeah. The retirement community there.
I mean, way back when there was interest from some of the butters, but at the time it was, as part of our town ordinances to sell a piece
So
of
the-
property like that, you got to put it out to bid. So it isn't just we can look toward the butters.
Right.
Library shelving. Let's open the
Give
can.
Diane whatever she wants. Come on, that's the way it works. Funny guy walking away. Funny guy.
That's why she's been waiting to hear that. She's been sitting here calmly for a couple hours.
The menace Teflon. Yes, exactly.
No, I mean, the system, I mean, there was two options for the system, and Diane's here to help make sure I don't screw it up. But the recommendations were two different alternatives. One's an electronic version, one's a manual crank version, and the recommendation from, after looking at it, I mean, really, it's about a $20,000 difference between going all electric or having it be manually cranked. But it would double your current storage space in the configuration that they proposed. But you're probably talking almost $100,000 before it's all said and done for all of it. To do the full electronic version, as big as it was, and then not knowing, the great unknown of what it's going to require for support, because it's a significant weight load on a timber, well, not a timber, but a wooden floor joist system. So, I mean, that's where you really need to find out what the costs are going to be, because maybe they aren't as bad as I'm painting it out to be, but I'm just picturing that it's not going to be cheap to do what it needs for support.
And this has to be on the second floor. It can't be on the base level.
We discussed that, and it would be a full swing from children's services to adult. And the downstairs doesn't lend itself to adult services. The ceilings are very low, and all the other shelving upstairs is much higher than that ceiling. And then it's the whole garden entrance for adults. With coming down Union Street, winter time, it's better with this new sidewalk person. However, it's never cleared enough when we're open. So there's all those issues, and then frankly, adults like the two-room system. They can be quiet out back and do their work. At study carrels, where the downstairs, it's just one big open space. So adults, I think, and then they lose their video room because that is upstairs, and we couldn't house that downstairs. There's just no room for that. So the logistics of all of that, and I think adults, wouldn't lend itself to adult services. The ceilings are quite low, and frankly, the lighting is not as good.
Well, you wouldn't gain as much anyway with the shelving because it
Right.
is so much shorter. I mean,
Right.
you wouldn't actually
Diane, you're
double
saying
it.
no then, right?
Yeah,
have
exactly.
you-
Correct. Her answer is no.
Have you ever tried to do anything with children running above you? Huh?
Right.
I guess
The supervision of two rooms with children would be difficult, because most of the time, if I don't have a program in the children's room, one person, is on duty.
Yeah, think the
With that-
sound would kill it just by
Right.
itself.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
You couldn't have a quiet library with kids running around
Right.
upstairs.
Could you actually just give it, and again, I'm new into the idea hearing this information is,
Oh,
sorry.
this is the first time we're hearing it.
Okay.
So that's where I was going to go next.
So is the shelving, okay, what are we going to gain by the shelving? Is this actually more for convenience, or is it the idea that you run out of space and you need more space for books?
Correct. I was asked to look into this. We're at capacity as we speak. I'm in the process of weeding the collection, but you do that every 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
That buys you some shelving. You all know that we lost 14 bottom shelves when we flooded. We were advised never to use them again, so they look pretty, but we lost about 2 years' worth of growth. So when I sat down with Mrs. Barnes on prelim for budgets, she came actually to the building, and we walked around, and Twyla had just finished her project, and she said, let's look into it. So we called the company that Twyla had dealt with. He came and assessed the whole building. That's the first thing he thought, boy, let's go see if we can do the downstairs. And he took a look at the children's room and said, probably not. These are low ceilings, and it doesn't lend itself to that kind of shelving. Cement can hold it, however, the efficiency in a basement, probably not. So he went back to Massachusetts, put this proposal together, and we met with him, Ryan and I did last Monday, I think it was, and he did his proposal. This would double the capacity of that back room from about 743
You're right.
about linear feet to 1,400 plus. He feels this would give us 20 to 25 years of growth capacity.
And it's the max that you could fit in that space as well.
Now, is this something that, I mean, I know Twyla's is kind of, when we seen the demonstration, it wasn't something the average kid was going to go open up those shelves. Is this something that strictly be done by personnel, or is this actually going to be?
That's why we spoke to him. It's all in here, and I'll certainly leave that with Mrs. Barnes, and you can all look through this. He recommends the electronic switches, not the, she's got the wheels, because it'd be tempting for children, or even adults probably. This is done electronically, so it's locked.
Okay.
We'd have 2 aisles open at one time, so they'd be browsing. She doesn't need that. She goes to one knowing what they're looking for, where for us, people are browsing Danielle Steele on one end and Stephen King on the other, so they'd be 2 open shelves at any one time. He recommends that the safety, what do they call those beams?
Yeah, there's 3 different levels of protection, so that way someone can't push the button if someone's in the aisle, or even if you leave, he kept saying a purse or a coffee cup, but if anything gets left in the aisle, it's just like a garage door beam, basically. Right. There's 3 different levels. You can have one that just has 1 beam, which he doesn't recommend. Then the one that, as a minimum recommendation, would be one that's, you've got the same, that goes the length of the shelving, so that way when it's moving, it would pick up. But it also has a beam that indicates if someone's come in or out. So if they've come in, broken the beam, then everything's powered off and stays powered off until they exit. And that's his minimum. Of course, the one they really want you to buy is the one that's got a little laser grid.
Right, which we don't need, but that middle grade, I think.
Cue Mission Impossible soundtrack, right?
I guess the question would be is, did he give you an option to actually progress in a sense where, this is actually, for 25 years of growth? I mean, is there an option to actually just do part of that rear room and then actually see how it works out, then eventually, if it worked that good, to actually do the other part of the room?
We discussed, I think there was 8, it ended up being 8 shelves in all, right?
There was multiple alternatives to bring the price down. I think he provided you with the Cadillac one right from the beginning. This had the top shelves across everything. Some of the things that I don't think you'd want to get rid of, which were the middle dividers, which kept books from falling in and out or whatnot. But it could basically be custom designed however you want. I think, it's like anything else, though, if
cost more.
If it's going to cost more later on, I mean, based on what the long-term goal.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. If we're going to be in that building 25 years from now.
You read my mind. That was my question. That was the one I was queuing up. Was that? I mean, 25 years out, that's fantastic. But when we look at the building, honestly, do we believe that that's going to be a 25-year investment of resource over time?
Based on what you've already spent on that building, I'd be surprised if it wasn't. I mean, we've done everything to the building. The entire below grade has been waterproofed all the way around. I mean, brickwork has been completed, the roof
If
was
we asked you
replaced.
tomorrow, if you could move out, get into double the square footage tomorrow, would you move out? You would say,
Probably not.
probably not?
I think that Main Street location is prime for a library. They've proven that over the years.
How about if it was actually just next door to the library where, no.
So we're gonna saddle you with the move next door, and that's it.
Yeah, but I guess the question is if we, you actually, there's two things I heard from you. One is you lost a lot of space around the bottom, and you're looking for some growth. I mean, to me, that would be the ideal thing is to know, what we need to buy to actually take care of what you actually lost, and the idea of some growth. I mean, I'm not sure if we have to. I mean, it just seems a fairly substantial, investment. But again, I'm not a librarian, so I mean, it's something where.
Have we considered an alternative to replace that heating system in the back that I know was a problem where we had to remove the books in the bottom shelf, but instead of spending $100,000 on new shelves, I mean maybe spend money on some new heat exchangers and stuff in the back there, and then put those bookshelves back in the bottom would give you the space back without having to put in a $100,000 installation.
We haven't looked at that option, but
What
removing
do we spend on the heat exchangers and stuff that we put in there previously?
significantly less.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, if you eliminated those baseboards,
then eliminate the baseboards, and it seems like you spent $20,000 instead of
behind
$100,000.
that's 10 Union Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's empty. Yeah, I know that. I'm just, if we're gonna spend $100K on shelving, why not just build an addition on the damn library?
One of my governing board members has that idea.
I'm just thinking, I don't want to spend $100K on shelving if we got space behind that and there's an empty lot behind that. We don't own it, but.
Yeah.
Well, and I
But
don't
we
want to scare
do,
you with the
kinda,
100,000, but what was because the total price was for the electronic version was $7.
Do we want to expend all that?
Well, it was close. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
80, 85.
I'm just thinking,
I think what you say is you want to check all the options before
well,
you actually.
if we go from 60 to 100 all said and done for the Cadillac of shelving, we're only going to gain 1,400 space. I like the idea of a lot of expansion going on Main Street right now, and if we're going to put money in anywhere, and I'm not saying it has to happen in this budget, forgive me for that, but if we're talking, let's talk about it in the bigger scope then. Let's say, great, we could do
years worth
if we're going to talk about 25 years of development, spend it on shelves or spend it on additional library, which I'm sure you might give us some really good ideas on how we could utilize some of that stuff.
Yeah, because I
And
would
if there's a
like to
need.
know what the 10-year comp plan looks for the libraries to actually sustain the growth, to be able to see, is it tied to the entire mission, or are we just reacting to a situation and going worst case scenario and throwing money at it? That's not planning.
That's not what you do.
To Cassie's point, no, we don't.
Trying not to.
The other question I would have is the fact is, where does this sit on the capital improvement plan for priority? Is this a this year, or is this a year 2 or 3? I need to know, because I'm not going to react and spend a lot of time going down the line of talking about this discussion if it doesn't need to be a priority in the full scheme of everything else that needs to be considered this coming year.
But it does sound like there's a need. There's something needs to be
No,
addressed.
exactly.
They're going to run out of space
Yeah.
there.
Well, this discussion really.
Gaining those 14 shelves would be.
Right, addressing the loss
We
of
can
space.
put some time, a few years to decide what to do there.
Well, and this whole discussion really started strictly with the idea of replacing the carpet.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the original.
Whatever you do,
Way
don't.
off the line. Further discussion.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't pay.
Want a new carpet? Talking about expanding the library.
Yeah.
Wow,
That's the way it works, man.
that's creeping scope right there.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, you have enough on that.
I do.
Next item.
You got the topic associated with heaters.
You're burning right through this.
All right, no, we're not. We're
I know.
squat.
I know.
All right,
Public Works. I'm about to cry.
The next can of worms I'd like to open would be the status of the natural gas conversion for library.
We're not even through the library.
I know.
That would be for my successor.
Yeah,
Or town buildings, rather.
We
But
put
I-
that
I-
on hold because there's nobody bid on the project on Union Street.
the reason I'm seeing that is I'm seeing it budgeted as status quo this coming fiscal year. And that, Heating and electricity is exactly the same in natural gas.
Oh, and what happened was, in my little note that I left here was that I suggested that we leave it the way it was until we got a little closer to the budget, but because even looking at the report that Lydia has, which was printed on the 20th, I think those numbers need to be decreased, and that's all of them, because, especially the electricity. And that was my only recommendation, is those 3 items. You'll have, you've got plenty of time before you're going to adopt the budget. You can look at some simple reductions there. I mean, it's not going to pay for another position or anything, but it was just, let's just leave it for now because it looks like we're.
That was why I was seeing that as well too. And the other part that I would say is we have a fund balance allocation that was to pay for those 2 upgrades for fire in the library. If we're not doing that, I want it turned back to be able to use it for another purpose. So I would like, knowing that we have Dennis associated with that, what do we need to expend now so the addressing the specific need. If it's not going to be a conversion, then we don't need to have a fund balance allocation sitting out there doing it. It's no good at all. That's why I'm asking.
So when you say nobody put a bid in for the Union Street, you're talking about for the excavation,
Right.
to put the lines in?
Right.
The only other one that's just a pissing contest with me, because I've seen it play out in Lewiston, is the fact is why we pay for a dumpster here when we have a solid waste facility. Why can't somebody bring it there?
We've always done it.
Boom!
Not a good answer.
It's $1,100, but why are we paying for a dumpster?
It's quite frankly because it's the custodian takes the trash to the dumpster.
Right.
And that's it. He doesn't transport it. We don't transport it. Public Works guys come and pick up the recycling, but the trash, that's how it's been disposed of.
How much trash do we go through in a week?
But dumpster's probably fairly.
It's a small, it's a 2-yard dumpster, I think.
It's $1,100 for the entire year, so it's not a significant amount.
Right.
No, but every little penny counts.
I mean, I've always had the same
I will
concern.
save like 3 pennies on
Lewiston
something.
City Hall does not have a dumpster for this exact discussion.
And the school actually has dumpsters in their yard, and they're connected in the same driveway to it. So I mean,
PW comes and takes care of it.
Wouldn't it just be cheaper for us to go get some trash barrels and then have
PW come and get it.
PW come in? I mean, I see them out driving around. So
I mean, usually the
swing
staff,
in and pick it up.
usually a staff of 2 people come on Tuesdays to pick up.
It's whatever. They pick up
Yeah.
the trash on Main Street and Village Street, and then at all the town buildings, pick up the recycling.
That $1,100, is that just this building?
It's just this building. There's another $1,100 in Mark Stevens' budget for MTM.
Which could also be dropped off at the transfer station.
Right.
Picked up.
Right.
My recommendation tonight is that goes to zero.
We have a rec
Yeah,
department.
I'm there with you too. I put out on it, and I think that we do is look at.
Yes, he does. He has woken me up several times. Not that it matters that I live at the end of the street. He'll come ripping down around that corner like he's got an engine brake and just whoa. Thankfully, the last couple of weeks I've already been at, but he has come early on some mornings that smoked me up.
Well, I just figured
I hear it
we
at
have
school from my house.
a PW truck.
Yep.
Never mind the engine, the tires. When he comes down off from 196, I'm telling you, I can't believe that. I just can't.
So you
believe
want
how
us
he
to
comes
look at
down there.
alternatives? for
Well, we
that?
have a PW pickup truck. We
that's
have
my
a rec
recommendation.
department pickup truck.
We have
I mean-
a transfer station.
Exactly. Throw it in and bring it
$60
over.
in garbage cans at Lowe's, and we're in pretty good, and maybe some can liners. We're in good shape.
If we didn't already have the personnel making the rounds, I mean, they're already here picking up
Yeah, they come once a week.
to
pick
pick
it
up
Yep.
to pick up recyclables. I mean, it's just I think it would have to be looked at and see if while they're here, how much more extra work that would be, and if it's actually cost effective or not. I mean,
What if we do like a
Pick one
2-week
day
trial?
and they just zip through.
Yeah.
What if we do a 2-week trial and just have them do
No,
it?
no.
He was here this morning. I saw
That
him.
that
Well
number
past
goes
it.
to zero. Make it work.
Here,
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm saying like
No
Dude, I
2
got
weeks.
brand new windows.
You
I got
rip
a
that
pretty big
Band-Aid
house,
off.
big
You're
house.
picking
Okay,
the
well,
scab.
I'm good. Let's get rid of it. Take it off.
See, I'm feeling where you're living.
Everybody's there then.
I mean, that's what I originally was saying.
I agree with you. Agree with you.
Yep.
That's a
So
bipolar.
we're removing it?
Yes.
I just as long as there's no downfalls. I mean, the biggest thing it's easy to say we're going to gain, but as long as there's no negatives, I guess that would be.
So
the
if we're
biggest
gonna
one.
It
remove
goes
it
across
out
the
of-
board. If there's any town facility that has a dumpster right now with that
That's what I was
same
saying.
line. We're not just gonna.
Sewer department's
Here,
one,
living
sewer
over
department's
there,
one you're
living-
not gonna wanna get rid of.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's their
different.
that's their budget. He can float that as a liaison.
Yeah. That's not me.
What other departments have dumpsters?
Rec department.
Just MTM in here.
Okay. Now we're to what we actually got here for tonight.
Oh,
Peter?
fire up.
The question, is that item 5277?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And let's move on to PW if there's nothing else, guys.
Hooray!
Goals? List of demands? What are we doing?
He's like, I'm out. I don't really care anymore.
Yeah, no exit strategy.
Oh, that we could imply something like that.
Capital improvement is what I'm seeing.
Pretty much the approach that we've taken the last few years is don't stop, but.
Well, one thing that I've maintaining the level of funding and service is what I'm seeing from this written here.
Taking a while to
Yeah,
get
and
the
then he's got
funding
6
where it
items
needs
on
to
the
be,
back.
and I hate to see that decreased.
What was that?
Taking a while to get the funding for this department where it needs to be.
Yeah, and if you come at us with a list of streets and what you're actually planning to be able to do to be able to back up that level of funding, I think you're going to have our support. I mean, because the way that we've approached this over the past couple of years is, quite frankly, with the level of animosity that's actually out there for what the value of the tax dollars, if you can put something quantifiable to actually say what their tax dollars are getting for them, investing in our infrastructure does that. I mean, streets is the perfect example. We've done a significant investment associated with that, and I know it is at least addressing some of it. Is it all? No. Pinewood still looks like ass. But that's just one road. That's the one on it.
Nason and Ferry, I'm about ready
I'm
to
sure
get.
there are others.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point being is he's addressing that and coming at us with a list of priorities that need to be addressed in the coming cycle. That's
Can you make up a list of roads that we've done in the last 2 or 3 years? And then a list of roads that you recommend that should be done within the next?
Should be. That list is pretty much already made for the
List-
budget.
Yeah, I mean,
price,
this year
right?
we've gone through
It's
the
in your
list.
office, for your old office.
The 2019, I did put together a 19 paving plan. I just dumped on Steve at the end there, but basically what my recommendation at this point is strictly based on where you're at in the season and being able to get out to bid and everything else. And this is my own thought process, and call me crazy, but Warren Circle, Hewden Road, Nason, Whitney, Madeline, Prince, Capitol Ave, Brook Street, and Key Road were all on the list to do in the current fiscal year. Different treatments for different streets. We got Hewden Road done, well, based in. Prince Street is done completely. Capitol Ave was just a mill and fill, that's done. Brook Street was based in, and Key Road was based in. Nason, Whitney, and Madeline we held off on, partly based on the workload that we had, but also partly because those streets are part of the sewer project. The sewer project is currently in design and will be going out to bid very shortly, with the plan being that sewer work will get done this year, and that is part of the 2019 paving plan. Nason, Whitney, Madeline, as well as the other streets that are going to be done as part of the sewer project, Andrea, Park, Osborne, Ferry, and Pinewoods Road would all be done as part of the 2018-19 paving budget. Those roads, based on estimates, and is around $419,000. Now, this is meaning that the Public Works Department is paying for all the pavement for those roads, and the Sewer Department would not be contributing to the
Total project.
the fixing of the road.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. But in general, and I believe that Mandy indicated to us that our funding source would not allow the sewer project to pay for any more than a trench patch. And in my mind, you're better off having the sewer project just deal with the sewer amount. You could pick, I told you this before, you
Right.
could throw a dart at a board and pick any street that needs to be done. I think your best bang for the buck for the next couple years is just to tag along behind those sewer projects. Once they're all done, reclaim the entire road, pave it, let it set for a winter, and then surface it the following year. And how you kind of spread that out, obviously, you guys have to sort that out. But my feeling at this point was to be able to, there's an existing balance. Right now, there's approximately $93,000 left, I believe, in the paving budget
From last year.
in our current fiscal
Right.
year. Yeah, and my thought was to, because of where you're at, it was a little more than that, 196. 196. There it is. Okay. What the hell did I do? Available. Oh, that was my original thought process. Was I thought we were going to be able to get Nason, Whitney, and Madeline done
Before June.
30. So you've actually got more money than I thought to spend. But my thought process was to surface Amalfi, Birch, Crest, Gayton, and Gartley streets, because those are ones that we paved with just a first lift a couple years ago, based on some recommendations that we had to try to stretch the dollars then, and quite honestly, they've held up fine, but you still should surface them, and based on where we're at from a timing standpoint, your best bet would be to take the money that's there now, surface those streets, get them off your list for.
So you're saying take the 196 that you had designated for Andrea, Nason, and
Right.
so on, instead of working on those between now and June, take that money and then put it on the surfacing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Surface those, and then you still have Warren Circle, which my plan was this spring that's what we were going to work on, was Warren Circle, because there's some areas,
Left of it.
there's some drainage areas that need to be addressed, and then have Crooker come in and do their thing. And that was still under that same contract from last year. I'm fairly comfortable that you've got enough money to do Warren, and surface all those other roads, including Huden Street.
I noticed when I went across Gould Road, a lot of the culverts have sunk pretty badly in there. I think maybe our new public works people need to be informed of, we got to hold those guys to the contract about that, or,
That was why we did it what we did. We just surfaced.
Okay, so
We
we can
based it in last year.
Pair those.
They'll be
works,
into surface this
okay,
year.
'cause
Yeah.
It needs to be fixed before they surface it off then.
Yeah.
When
That was
Maine,
why we did it that
tough
way.
game.
Yeah, okay.
Now,
Yes, it is, yeah.
Webster Road,
Mm-hmm.
that was just a reclaim, right?
That wasn't a reclaim. That was just a shim and a chip
That was-
seal.
Okay.
We never did grind that one up and pave it. That one, and you can tell the difference from the roads that we've reclaimed versus the ones that we just shimmed.
So,
And now that the threshold is increased to 250, you would have more of an opportunity to do those. That's why we were able to do Huden Road, because it was, more than the original 100,000.
is it your opinion that we can efficiently exhaust the 196 that we have in the 425 to get the best value in the coming season?
I think it's going to be a combination of from now until June 30, but then also all the way through to the following June 30. I mean, I think that's going to be, base things in, just like Mark's point. See how it settles out over the winter time, and then come back and surface it in the spring.
Well, I understand, but
I guess
my
to answer your question is yes.
that's what he.
Short answer.
Yeah. No, reason I ask is because if we can't get that work done by next June, I was going to come back with less of an amount for the 425. That's what I'm leveraging the staff to be able to make that opinion, because we've got
There's
a
no
good
reason
roll
that
going.
can't happen.
That 196 that's there, it's had Whitney and Nason and
Andrew.
already in it, right?
That was supposed to be, and that's why.
So I just want to make sure I'm not understanding, because I know that the 425 also included Whitney, Nason, and the other one as well. So didn't it? So we double dipping on that?
No,
No,
because
no, 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 no.
Okay.
the 196 was going to do that, finish that from now to June,
But
but where he's
talking
saying,
about chasing the sewer projects. No, I understand very
Right.
clearly, but I just want to make sure we didn't count those roads twice.
but then take that 196 and go ahead and resurface the ones that were
Need to be
already
done.
right.
Yep.
Now, strictly because in fact, all you need is authorization from us to go out to bid, because this is subbed out to whoever gets the bid to be able to make that happen, correct? How much of this is actually
Crooker's still
your
on the hook.
staffing?
Crooker's still on the hook until the end of June.
So we have his pavement pricing
Pricing and
for
which is less-
197 to use the balance of that amount.
That's what, now I understand my notes I'm looking at here. I estimated there was about 182,000 left to do in this current year. But then I took out the 103, which is basically Nason, Whitney, Madeline. That left me 190, and then, excuse me, the 103 is what I say is left to do out of what we plan to do, because we didn't do Nason, Whitney, and Madeline.
Okay.
And so what I was looking at was, it's about 90,000, and there's the difference. So it was about $90,000 to surface Amalfi, Birch, Crest, Gayton, and Gartley, as compared to the 103. So that's where I was going with those numbers.
Yeah, 103 just slides into that 425 that we're going to use for the following
and then you do it out of that,
18-19 season
exactly.
and do it
And
on the
then
back
if you
end,
look at,
chasing the sewer.
right, and based on that, Nason, Whitney, Madeline, Andrea Park, Osborne, Ferry, and Pine Woods. We call it Pine Woods 1 because it's actually from, we wanted to do to Cotton Road, but you can't do
It's a
it.
haul.
You can't do it, so it's just to go from Ferry to Winter Street. Covers that area, same deal that the sewer project occurred in. And that's all these projects are designed to be reclaim the road just like we did on everything else this past year.
Okay. Remind me again, when did we go out to bid? Is that the June timeframe? So we have the price.
We went out to bid originally in,
So should we be doing the same?
Yep.
That's the agenda.
And I did go around already with Crooker to look at, and we
Right.
looked at Crest and all them, and they're supposed to be putting together, his numbers, comparing to my guesses.
So he'll be ready when he sees our.
Well, and I explained to him what
RFP
my
show
thought
up.
process was, and I said, the council needed to make the final decision as far as that was concerned, but this is kind of what I was gonna come at him with.
It's the biggest bang for the buck. I'm asking because it's 600 grand. The fact is, are we going to effectively use it? I'm hearing yes.
I don't
So-
see any reason why you can't, because you don't have, this past year, we had the 1.5 that we
Right.
had too. I mean, we had a lot, they did a
There
lot.
was projects everywhere, so that's why. Agreed. All right. I'll go right to the item above it. I'm recommending motor vehicles goes to 0. I think it's a great idea. I would love to be able to copy the model for what we actually have at the fire department, but I know we've made significant improvements within PW or addressing the needs.
You're talking about the
47.
reserve account?
Yes.
That's not,
Where
that's
were you?
5420.
On 5430 is what I'm looking at.
5420, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
Heavy machine, I already put that at 0.
Oh, you're talking about heavy machinery? I thought you were
430 is motor.
5430, motor vehicles.
Yeah, 5420 is heavy machinery.
0.
For the pickup truck, for the public works.
What did, we already went to 0 on the 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the 5430 with the 30,000.
That was for a pickup. That was a replacement pickup.
What is that?
30,000 is to replace a pickup.
Yeah. What's the need on that vehicle?
It's a 2004 that we got from the auction, state auction already. It's
They used
a
your
little
power.
worn out. Yeah.
There's one out when you got it, almost.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the question I'm going to ask Ryan, because he's leaving, so he has nothing to lose to throw anything out tonight.
He's getting a lot of those questions.
Okay.
Though.
So Ryan, on this budget, okay, we actually have invested some serious money in a couple brand new trucks, big trucks, brand new, fairly new loader, new chipper. I mean, I do see that you mentioned there's actually 71 pieces of equipment that actually the town maintains. Does this budget reflect the proper preventive maintenance and upkeep of those equipment to actually get the full lifespan out of it? I don't see a whole lot in here for actual.
No, you've got a $40,000 parts line, and you've got, what is it? Where's the equipment repair.
I see 45 for oil changes, I see some parts, but actually, that's all reactive when something breaks. But I mean, as far as for preventive, as far as for just good.
For now, honestly, for the next 5 years, well, some variation of 3 to 5 years, I'll say, you've got everything is under warranty. We bought extended warranties on all the big trucks when we bought them, on the loader. I believe, and I can't remember exactly how many years, but for the first, I want to say 3 years, but don't hold it to me, hold me to it, but the loader is under their maintenance for the first, maybe it's only 2, I can't remember.
Yeah, because warranty.
Anyway, in any case, I mean,
Yeah.
majority of the equipment now is under warranty.
Yeah. And I do understand the warranty part. If something breaks, they fix it. But the preventive part of it, the idea of the
Oil changes and brakes, I mean, it seems like they go through brakes.
So you think? Do you
But,
think?
but-
So you're saying a public works actually is equipped, personnel-wise, time-wise, and equipment-wise, to
Not
actually
for everything that they need to do.
preventive maintenance to keep the stuff good. You mean?
Between the PD and the fire department, you could have another full-time mechanic just to help take care of their stuff. Because you have 2 mechanics, one guy calls in sick, all of a sudden you got 1 mechanic. And you've got PD, fire, every other department in town coming through that shop.
It's just one of those things where we invest in some serious money in some nice equipment. You mean, and one of those things where nice equipment doesn't stay nice if you don't. I see a lot of preventive type maintenance on it, you know? But
Well, and a lot of that needs to be addressed at the staff level with the folks that have been given the trucks that don't take care of them. Don't wash them adequately, don't grease them adequately, no matter how often you nag. And you're right, I am done, so I'm going to be pretty
well,
straightforward.
I mean, it's honest. I mean, if you don't, I mean, it's out in bad weather, you got to take care of it.
And they don't. They
It
just
should be
flat
part of
out
the job
don't.
description in the future going forward. We're going to have to hold people's feet to the fire.
But financially, as far as budget-wise, there's
The budget, I mean, I can't think of anything that has not been in service for a budget standpoint.
Okay.
And the mechanics for the last 4 or 5 years, well, probably even a little bit longer than that, have done a very good job of managing the parts budget.
Yeah.
Because now they go out and get prices instead of
Yeah.
just pick up the phone and call whoever because that's who they call. I mean, the mechanics that are there now and the ones that were there just before them, all of them price shop diligently because they were told they had to
get
price
so
shop
much.
diligently.
You only got so much to work with, right? So.
There were years in the past where the parts budget would be one of those ones like the salt budget that would be overblown every year.
Yeah.
And that's just because they weren't managing well.
Yeah. I mean, it always kind of blew my mind. We have $1 million fire truck. And we have a $12,000 budget a year to fix it. I mean, what do you buy on a big truck like that for $12,000? I mean, it's,
Well, and then part of the problem is with the fire trucks that you have right now, you can only get the parts from one place.
yeah.
And if you want it back in service, it's overnighted and then from Illinois or wherever.
Yeah.
Are our mechanics certified to work on fire trucks?
For preventative maintenance stuff on the chassis, but not the actual.
That's why everything goes up with the arrangements that we have. Okay. I will reverse my position on the vehicle. I thought that was a reserve account, and
No, that's already been cut out.
The-
Before I got to you.
So you're leaving it in?
Sure.
I don't have an issue with it. By all means, go.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know if I'm just missing something or I'm uneducated on this, but on 5335, the tree removal and replacement, in 2017 was 5,000 budgeted, and actual was 377, and then it was budgeted 5,000 this year, and there's still 5,000, and they're looking for an increase of 20%. I'm just wondering if something can be done there, or I just don't know something.
We're looking at some of the trees out back here that are dying, those big pine trees. Dennis is getting prices on that, so typically in the spring is when we spend that money.
Is that subbed out, or is that done by your crew?
Subbed. You could spend $1,500 on one tree.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a tree that needs to come down on Oak Street.
What's the one that?
Find anyone to take it down.
Want the pros in there knocking
You
those
have a
things
list of the
down,
ones
yeah.
that need to come down?
So there are plans to take some down.
Yes.
Well, and honestly, Chris, just so you know, the 9-year average, and that's kind of how when I put together the budget, I've got enough history now to have the actuals. We spent it's usually averaged around 4,000 over the last 9 years. So
The last couple of years, we just haven't really spent anything.
Well, and some of it's been, it didn't get done in the time that we needed to get done. I mean, like I said, there's one tree that we had a price for, and the only guy that gave us a price still hasn't been able to take it down.
Part of that too would be the Summer Street and the other projects that actually had both sides being done, so we're mobilizing people to do other projects that isn't coming off this line item. Is that a fair assessment too?
Correct. The ones that.
So
like
we've
all
been
that-
doing other things that haven't fed to this
Right.
line, is my point.
Right.
Right. I had identified that one, Counselor, too, is that, so that's a good explanation as well.
Kind of the same thing on the equipment painting.
Thank you.
Their
You
plans
hit the next one I had, so I'd like to hear it.
Their plans.
Hasn't been done.
That's by staff, right?
No, that was for us to send it out. Part of it was the last few trucks that we've been budgeting money to paint equipment in the spring. Is generally what would happen is we would blast it and send it off to be painted, but we haven't done as much as we should because they've been tied up with other projects. And last couple of years we got rid of the trucks, so I mean it's one of those lines that most definitely could be looked at. You've only got a couple trucks now that have any real age on them anyway, other than the pickups, and that's the big question. If you're not going to,
If you're not keeping it, why are we repainting it?
exactly,
Right.
that's why we're not. That one would need to have a new bed and everything else. That's the reason why that one's.
So would you,
slated to go down the
I would make a
think you could
recommendation to
cut
cut that to
Yeah.
$3,000. That's been the last year, 3-year trend. $2,000 reduction to equipment painting, 5348.
So put that at 3?
Yep. How about repairs and maintenance streets? Is that the next one you had there, Counselor?
Ah, yeah, that's a good one.
I did have that, Mark.
Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
I like the way you think, sir.
Where did I see road striping? I made myself a note. What I did there is, and again, it was mostly for discussion purposes. This includes quite a bit more edge line painting being done instead of just center line that we've
Yeah,
done.
what
in
does
the
that
past.
mean?
White line.
What does that
the
mean?
white line?
Lines
line on the
side of
edge.
road.
When you say more, we're not doing it. Is
We
what I
haven't
mean.
done it. They haven't been done in years. And that's just it. I look down through the streets that have had center and that just get a center line paint, and I think that edge line would be nice too. But that's same deal. It was more for discussion than anything else. And we don't always do. The last few years we've been up against the budget. It's been a little too low based on just the bare minimum that we've been doing. We've been fortunate that we've had some overlap with roads that have been paved, so we've been able to make it work that way. But it's one of those lines that needs to see a bit of an increase. And I put in what it should be if you were going to do all the streets that you center line would also get edge lines.
If we remove all the edge lines, what does it look like?
Oh, now I got to find
$18,000.
The person
No,
walking
it's
up Desert
only-
Road doesn't know where the edge is. So.
It's what? I'm sorry. What?
Because that's the historical average.
All
You
right.
said that was too low.
No, I agree.
It's giving him a chance to give him more than 18.
19,129 was my. So I'd say 20,000.
Perfect. Sold.
And then the other one.
Minus $9,000.
Alan, that was easy. Done. Next. Listen to him.
50.
Is there any requirement on Route 9, since there is a shoulder there, to actually have to keep those up and painted?
We need to paint, yeah, and that's included on here. And we actually had to do more because they moved. I'll be interested to see what they do this year, to be honest with you. Because unbeknownst to us, until we asked them to come do a driveway entrance
Oh, I
permit,
did that in the wrong one.
they moved the urban compact line out.
Yep.
We're required to paint within the urban compact.
Nice.
Last year, they had the paving project, so they did the whole road. And the year before that, they started painting where they usually started painting. So I'll be interested to see what they do this year, but we carried where our responsibility.
So the state
Goes
does
to-
that, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, we don't do that.
I would just want, is there certain roads besides the state roads that require the idea of the edge painting, or not really? Just,
I think it's at our
are we required to do
discretion.
the middle?
Based on the angry phone calls that you'll get from roads that aren't striped,
I think they need to be. I'm just curious. I mean, just because they don't require it doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. I guess is.
well, I learned my lesson on Webster Road when I said we weren't going to stripe it.
Oh, yeah.
Stripe it.
Little residential streets.
Just put passing lanes on every road and we'd be in. You know?
I think it's just safety issues when you're driving at night. If you're
I'm
trying
just
to
teasing,
see
yeah.
sometimes.
Mostly, and anybody buying a new car with smart vision, it actually, the only way it works is actually off stripes, and it has to be on both sides. So if you're buying a car that actually has some type of steerability as far as eyesight, it needs
I know.
lines on both sides.
I apologize. I
No,
didn't
it's
realize
okay.
I didn't realize it was her.
I agree.
it's
Yeah,
okay.
that's why you'll never
It's all
see
good.
self-driving cars in Maine.
No.
You did what?
Let's talk OT.
What do you want to talk about?
When's the last time we got above the $30,000 mark to go to 40?
Well, last year we bumped it to 40, because that's the $10,000 of OT that we budgeted to pay the sewer department. We originally had airtime in equipment rental, and as part of budget deliberations last year, we discussed moving that approximately $10,000 for out of equipment rental and putting it into the OT budget. The $30,000 is in Public Works for their contract obligation amount, which is roughly $22,000, I believe, and then the rest of it is to cover for Moxie and then whatever else they get called in for. The 10 on top of the 30 was strictly for when sewer department is out cleaning storm drains as part of the MS4.
Now, I thought the equipment rental, the 30 grand below, included both sides of that. So, am I missed? I'm going to let you ponder that. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. I'm losing my audience. And the woman that I actually was going to honor that is actually the one that stayed. The other guy left. So go ahead, fabulate your answer. I apologize.
We need to talk about that going over here for deferred, and then this is on the fund balance. What do you think everybody notices that? This is my manager, I'm taking it out.
No, you need to bring us back in on those. Yes. Have I said thank you enough tonight?
No.
Thank you. I was intending to go Thursday night, by the way.
I've heard that from so many people.
Yeah, well, I know where I was still sitting, and it was
Budget?
work.
Yep.
And it doesn't make it any better, but
I'm not going to rip this down, okay?
Oh, thanks.
If it goes, just let it go.
That cover on.
This must be the seventh inning stretch.
well, half an hour ago, Cass asked me for a 5-minute restroom break. so what? I'm lucky I haven't been punched yet.
Did you want me to leave this with you?
Please, I haven't seen that.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's a very good presentation.
Is it your only copy?
That's okay. I know that you'll have it and you can get it
I
back to
will-
Mrs. Barnes, no problem.
I will see about, if nothing else, making a copy
He
and
was
getting
very
it back.
thorough and, you know,
Don't
sat
buy
with us and answered
You
our
will get this
questions.
back.
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
I like his line. I give you credit every time I say it.
Jeez, that's a great idea.
Taste the rainbow?
Drive safely. Indeed.
Yes, drive fast, take chances.
Yes.
Online. How much time we got?
I can't do those. What was that?
How much time did you say?
Do what you need to do. Go. I'll wait till you come back.
Just a couple puffs.
Sounds good.
I think they've settled.
When you walked out, sir, she gave me the what the hell.
I sent him a text and I was like, "Can we do a 5-minute potty break, please?"
Sorry, man. I tried to wait.
No.
And he was like, "Just a minute."
I thought it was my
That's
kids.
still
They
live.
call me all the time. And I got the text, and when I'm getting the eyes, what am I missing? So I apologize.
I was like trying to.
I know this is still going on over the internet, and I don't give a damn. But
I was trying to figure out which eye was looking at me.
you know what? You know me well enough to know if it's the left one, you are really got a problem. And it's dead socket seeing nothing.
Alan, I love your person, Alan.
Oh, yeah. Mrs. Ward will tell you when it's looking at you, I'm messed up. Send me home.
He needs a ride.
I appreciate the bipolar brain dump too, because there is a bunch of information here from somebody that we know is on borrowed time. But I appreciate again. So
No problem. I thought Steve was going to do all this, but
well, I was going to ask the guy sitting in the back row how he's liking the show. Right. He's not going to have a solid stool for 2 weeks, but that's all right.
You know it works, right?
Like, oh yeah, we are still alive.
Oh, Jesus.
Aren't you technically already gone?
glutton for punishment, I guess.
Oh, jeez.
How'd your first day go?
Don't know yet.
Don't.
Hasn't happened.
So you took time off between?
A little bit.
Good. Good.
You should have planned it better. At least do it in the summer.
I'm working on a project at home, so this has been perfect.
Do you ever not have a project going on at home?
I don't know what I do.
I create the projects.
You're the idea person?
No, I do the destruction and then I walk away and add it to the honey-do list.
I had a bathroom with an end date of Christmas that was a little bit tense in our household too. Cause
Yeah, what happened with that? Was that
Oh,
just
it's
something
done.
that she just? Well, I know you
it's all
finished
done,
it, but was that just something that she just randomly decided one day?
no, I've been putting her off for 8 years, and I just couldn't do it any longer. I was out of excuses.
Yeah, that you don't have to remind me every 6 months. Is that the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was.
See, she should just do like what I do and take the initiative and do the destruction, and then you have no choice. You have to fix it.
Well, they would only gone so far because 8 weeks before we decided, I didn't have the second bathroom to even be an option. So
Yeah, that could be rough.
that's 3 months of using big apples. That's really not going to fly.
I only have one bathroom, and I did it.
Makes you as
I grew up in a house of 10 with one
all right,
bathroom.
all right.
Me and Creed.
On that note, we're going to regroup.
Outnumbered, right?
Yeah.
That's right, you're the only boy.
Norm was using the property line for a solid couple, most of his.
Amen, brother.
Amen.
I don't care how many sisters you got. Norman beat you all.
Yeah. You're not topping that. I know.
Right now,
Are we cranking on, are we?
Yes.
Yeah, go.
All right.
Yeah.
For the listening audience that's been entertained for our 5-minute break, I will regroup. And Ryan was asked the question. What was the question?
That line should probably be reduced.
Which one?
The rental,
Thank you.
So, for how much?
20. The actuals in 16 and 17 were 21 and 19 respectively. And with the amount of road work we've been doing, we have been renting equipment much more often. But there was more money there than needed to be if you're going to put the 10 up in the wage line.
I thought it was one basket of goods on that line, and I was okay with it, which is why I was looking at the overtime.
Nope,
But
it
yes,
should be split.
I will make the recommendation. 5266 equipment rental goes down to $20,000 minus $10,000.
Individual line item budget,
Councilor Crawford, you had a shopping list. You got any more there?
I'm good.
It was a good list. Anything else in PW that we already didn't touch on?
I just want to say that
Oh.
number 5410, equipment, 430,000. That's in the initial budget, and it's 0 under manager. I pulled the fuel pumps and the wheeler out to be possibly funded through unassigned fund balance. If you should choose to do the wheeler, and then the fuel pumps, that's still up in the air because there is a possibility that we could extend the life of the diesel tank for another 10 years. But we have to go through a process to do that, and we're gonna start that process.
What do they do? Some type of testing on it? Or?
They can test it and extend.
Yeah.
That was that was part of the letter when they sent it.
So in essence, you zeroed that line.
I zeroed it, yes. And I zeroed the heavy machinery, the 5420.
Yep.
And then the MDOT match 5436. I zeroed that and put that for not this upcoming cycle under fund balance, but deferred because of projects going to be probably 2021.
So
Can you
Oh,
go
the
back
MD
to Fern's question? Go ahead, your choice.
No.
There was a good point that was actually made associated with the tanks. Can you explain that? You were just in the process of starting.
Yeah, there's an option to. I mean, they indicated that when they send you the letter saying that your tank's going to be your certification expires. They can do additional testing, but it has to be done within a certain window of when your tank is set to expire to determine if the tank can be extended for 10 years. That's not a given that it will make it for 10 years. I mean, but there is a chance to try to extend through testing, be able to extend that deadline when you have to remove it. If the testing fails, then you're up against it.
I'll deal with the cost of that.
It's a couple $100.
What's that?
It's cheap to figure it out, whether or not you need to do it or not.
It was tested last year in July, so we're going to test it again this July just to see if there's been any change.
How they test? Is it photograph? Is it sonic testing? I mean, I'm just kind of curious how they check an underground tank for year to year.
A little test well that cathartic anodes in it, similar to like on the boat, like an
Yeah.
outboard or something. And they basically do testing of that, and there's I don't know if they do like a curve crawl or how they do that, but they come up with a number, which the number for last year is saying that we're fine where we are now, but there's maybe called concern. I really don't know how to interpret the report or what we were told. I just became involved in something today.
Any way you look at it, the diesel fuel pump, if you leave the tank in the ground,
Yeah.
that needs to be upgraded because we're cobbling parts together now to keep it running. And we've had problems with that pump quite often. So that if you're not going to do the whole full-blown tank replacing everything else, the pump itself needs to be considered for
Is
replacement.
there anything in this budget now, since it's been zeroed, that taking care of that at all? There's nothing.
No.
So if that pump died tomorrow, we have to upgrade it somehow, some way.
Yeah, you just take, and honestly, it would probably come out of the town buildings budget.
I got a crazy question that maybe I'm just need to be schooled on, but besides the idea of convenience, why do we actually have our own tanks? Why don't we actually buy it? We make a deal with a vendor, like the school did for a while, and just go to a local vendor and actually fill up there with a pre-announced yearly budget and save the $200,000 and not have to deal with it. But is there any requirement saying that we have to do that? Have our own?
I think it'd be, I mean, it depends on where you're going to get in and out of with a fully geared plow truck in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
As long as it's an easy access. I
And
mean,
then you've got to deal with all the taxes that we don't have to pay right now. We don't have to pay any taxes on the fuel we purchase.
You would have to go through the refund process.
We'd have to go through the refund, and then that vendor who you make a deal with needs to be open 24/7. So when you have a storm, you've got to make sure they're open.
Most places sell diesel out 24/7 now. But I was just kind of curious. I mean, it's just a lot of money, and I know another school at one point in time, when there was an issue about what we were paying for diesel, started using it.
But the school's using it too, so they would have to find an alternative place. Right now, it's convenient for them because their buses are.
And again, I was just kind of curious. Just $200,000 for tanks. If we don't, I mean, that just means 10 years.
anything you do there
Do
needs
we
to be
lock in
split
for
up
fuel
between
price?
those that use it too.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to lock in at a
school department
Well,
uses a
you
significant
pay the
amount
rack
of diesel.
price is what you pay.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll let you lock in. I mean, the year
Yeah, I mean, you
before
can
this
make-
year, I locked in for diesel and for the gas,
Commercial
which is
accounts.
unusual.
Commercial accounts. When you go to a big place like moving into town, like in Irving or something, the commercial accounts don't pay as time changes week to week. I mean, they actually have more of a set schedule. You mean because it's again a big company, and if you're just buying how much diesel we buy with it throughout the year, you know, it's
Just PW alone is 12,000
You'd
gallons.
be paying less than the average.
Yeah. So again, I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know,
Yeah.
There
I
was no
just-
lock-in.
Yeah, right now we pay the rack plus a little
Yeah.
markup, and
Yeah.
I don't know that we would get that. I mean, I don't believe that they would charge us rack plus a markup.
I don't know.
I mean, and where would we go? I mean, there's not really many options locally.
The newest soon-to-be station would probably be your best alternative from an in and an out.
Yeah, it's actually going to be designed to fill big trucks. Again,
But other than that, there's,
yeah. I mean, buses and fire trucks and stuff is no problem, even some of the other ones. It's more the geared up plow truck, you mean, but.
well, and the school buses when they line up in the morning, or
Mm-hmm.
they're filling up in the afternoon, I mean,
It's a lot of area, yeah, I got you. It's just a question, you know what I mean?
Phones.
Yes, go for it.
No, I'm just putting it out there to you, that's fine.
Telephones?
Wrong with that ball, so, stipend versus,
Luckily, if we could
Yeah, I
spend
had the
$200 and find
general
out we
note.
can
I
keep
was
it
gonna
longer,
ask.
I mean, that's
Where
ideal.
you
Right.
stand on your
Val, and the biggest thing is to make sure you get
telephones,
beyond
stipends
They're
in
all
general.
next
turned
year,
over to
because
stipends
there
except
are
two
more
of the
tanks that need to be replaced in
I
2019
just saw it,
than there are
the
firms
line,
to be
so
able
we
to
can
do
pull that
all
line
the
from here then.
in that
Correct.
timeframe.
We could pull the line.
Oh, we're still gonna pay a stipend, so the line's not gonna be, it's,
You reduce it to what
Gotta
the
reduce
stipend.
Do I say pull, reduce, you're
Yeah.
right, you're right.
yeah, I've gotta make that adjustment, but the three that I'm not is the police and general assistance.
Makes sense.
Those are the three, cause you,
You're dedicated.
but I only have 2 employees left, and we're working on that.
Yep.
By
Would-
May 1st, that should be all converted over, and we'll have everybody we'll be just paying a stipend.
The question is asked about cell phones. What is that current stipend level?
$35 a month.
So, pumps. You had a question. You comfortable with the answer you got there? That without it actually.
I mean, the pump isn't a crazy amount of money anyway, so you're talking just about the surface unit, right? I mean,
Right, it would be something that, and I think that same deal, if the testing can be done before the end of June, that may be another option for what's available in this year's town buildings budget, bill for a balance. Especially if it sounds like the shelving thing is
Especially if, as Ryan noted, I mean, whatever entities actually use that would have to be
they should
shared.
split the cost.
Shared in that cost, right? So.
One of the discussions associated with the gas pumps that Diane explained to me earlier was timing is such, if we're testing it in July and we're testing it again next May, we potentially may get a clean bill of health that there won't be any fund balance expenditure in this coming year, but we're earmarking it for potentially some as a placeholder for FY19, is my understanding.
Right.
That's conservatively there. We're earmarking it while we have it available to be able to give us time to explore other options.
Right.
So is there money in this budget or not? I mean, I thought I heard that was actually zeroed out.
It's a recommended
Yes,
fund
it's-
balance allocation
Right.
right now for
I've
the
moved it to
250
another
grand.
Funding source.
Can we
other
do
than
it? Can
taxation.
we do me a solid? Because I expect that I am going to hear the criticism. We have capacity to actually only do 250. I would have that allocation be $240,000, so we don't have to hear that criticism that we're violating our charter.
Why?
I've got 230 down here.
Why?
You rock. Thank
Why?
you.
Why?
Well, that was yes, and that-
I guess the question is if we're taking out of general fund, why do we have to allocate it anyways? Why can't it just stay in the general fund? We can actually, I mean,
It's just gonna be allocated on paper. It's not gonna go anywhere.
what does that gain us? Though?
It actually takes it from unreserved for a designated purpose, so we don't have it available for something else at a later discussion. That's the short answer.
That's the biggest benefit of doing that.
From
That's all
unassigned
it
to
is.
assigned. Yeah.
What we've done is at least addressed administratively that it's not coming from taxation, it's not coming from a financial bonding affair. We've addressed if we have to replace these pumps, the 230 grand is coming from funds that have already been raised from taxation. Is over.
Money can actually stay in that category
Correct.
until you need to use it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Even if it goes over, you carry it over to the following year.
Just like the previous discussion with the allocation for the fire and library upgrades. turning that back as we're releasing that to be able to be used for a future discussion because it's just sitting there doing nothing.
So has a discussion been made with the school department that out of that $230,000 that they may be actually responsible for a portion of that if they're using it as much as we are? Has that actually been, has that dialogue been out there at all?
No.
We haven't had, I mean, this is a on the radar item that don't know what the pleasure of the
Who else is
council.
actually using, I mean, between Public Works, the police department, and school? So
Sewer.
Sewer, we'd have to allocate a portion to the sewer budget too. So
we're
that
talking-
200,
Easy enough
So
to
we-
identify based on usage.
We're
Well,
talking,
that's what we did when we bought the cameras before. It
we're
was a
talking out of a
percentage.
$230,000 project. We're only responsible for a third of it out of our municipal budget, basically is what you're saying, right?
depends on how you're gonna allocate.
How do
Depends
you-
on if you go
how do you
by
measure
percentage.
Well, I mean, just saying, I mean, if we,
Well, we have that, actually.
Gallons. You
Yeah.
have gallons.
I'm going gallons. I heard you
You
say
have-
camera, but I'm
you
going
have-
gallons.
you have
Well, I'm saying
gallons.
that we had that's how we allocated the purchase of the cameras when we installed them.
Yeah, right.
Was based on the usage that each department had. That was the
Yeah.
percentage they paid.
I'd just like to see that in the budget, actually. It's just one, right now, we're just allocating
We
the
can
whole
give you
amount
the
out of
percentages
us.
on
I
what
mean,
that would look like if we
I
allocated
think that's a
it.
great idea. I think it's a really good idea.
You're gonna see the
Sense
school
of
department's
transparency.
gonna
Let's just
pick
say
up the bulk of that.
usage, and then you can say allocate accordingly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if they say, well, you know, we're gonna find other means, well, then we need to know that going into it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It
When
was
they-
line item,
And it's a proactive discussion because,
410, thank you.
again, we're talking about a potential expenditure in FY19, so you're
Right.
letting them know a year in advance of what we're looking at.
The problem of having it tested is if they test it and say, holy shit, you guys got a problem now, you gotta deal
Well,
with
that's
it
why
now. I mean, you can't say, well, we're gonna do it next year. They're gonna say,
If
Yeah, I
we
mean-
test it in July, which we want to do, and it hasn't changed from last July, I feel pretty comfortable that when we test it again in May, because you can't test it any sooner than 6 months before you have to have the tanks out. And that's in November of 19. So May is the earliest that we can have it tested, so.
but you
I
still gotta be
would-
prepared if they actually say the test comes back and it fails. I mean, you gotta
Right,
have
but
a plan.
we should, I mean, we should have an indicator this year. If it hasn't changed, or if it has changed, then yeah, we probably wouldn't wait. We'd want to do it in this upcoming cycle, but.
And just as an FYI, when we looked at it before, the school is about half of the total
Usage.
PW's. Is closer to what's 11,000.
You would think those school buses would burn a lot of fuel, but,
Especially the diesel.
yeah, right.
Diesels on buses is equivalent to our winter operations. It's about 50%.
And when it comes to the gas pumps, it's going to be PD.
On the hook for $100,000.
I mean, it's a legitimate discussion, needs to be done prior to the
absolutely.
idea of actually saying that we need it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
So let's have it sooner rather than later.
yeah.
Yeah, when you're letting them know potentially a year in advance is the way we're trying to proactively approach it.
The biggest push for trying to get it done sooner rather than later as well is based on the feedback from the vendors that do the work, indicating that 2019 is going to be, meaning calendar year 19, is going to be a significant number of tanks that are all going to be 30 years old, all be up for replacement. So that was one of the reasons to push to do it sooner rather than later if we were going to do it, to make sure we get on
Right.
schedule.
Right,
'Cause
right. Wheeler.
Yes or no? It's not in there.
I'm going to answer the question with a question. In your opinion, does it need to be replaced this year?
We don't have one.
We don't have one, yeah,
Yeah.
so we haven't had
So
it.
The
that
truck that
is-
we're looking to replace is the 1999 truck that's, over the course of the 17 years that I've been here, has had its frame replaced once, and is too small for the task that it's supposed to be doing. And that's a regular plow route. And it's one, the benefit is that it's one that doesn't require a Class B license. So in the past, when we've had to hire someone that didn't have a Class B because we didn't have any Class B applicants, we were able to throw them in that truck and they'd still be able to plow a route.
It's nothing to do with the technical ability of running the plow. It's all comes to weight. So, I mean, it isn't that person doesn't need to be any more skilled than any other plow truck. It's just the weight that's in the door jam says that you're not required by the state to do it. So,
There's no air brakes either.
no air brakes, yeah.
And so, the original plan when we started replacing the cabin chassis, you know, one of my original approaches was to do a full truck at one point, because then we would have enough bodies as we were going through that when it came time to replace this truck, we'd still have a body. But based on where we're at now, there's always been the discussion or desire for a wheeler in the department because we don't have one. That would be beneficial on some of the longer plow routes, but also with snow removal and whatever. And if we were looking at replacing the truck, the recommendation this time was to go with the wheeler since you don't have a body to use anyway, to put onto just to buy a cabin chassis like we've done. So that was the original approach and why we were requesting it. And again, it's because the truck that we'd look to save it as a backup, and it also could be used with Mark's crew at Beaver Park in the summertime. We've set it up to haul the chipper, so that way when they're chipping, instead of depending on where they're at, they can chip into the truck. So I mean, it still has its use, but from a plowing standpoint, we'd be better off without it. Yeah. So that's the spiel on that.
Would be the wish. Right now, it's a fund balance allocation is the recommendation from Diane. It's similar to what we did last year for the piece of apparatus and for the trucks to get where we are in the discussion.
Is that truck right now used on smaller side streets versus bigger roads? I mean, what would you actually have to shuffle around on your regular plow route to actually? What would you actually be replaced? Could you use one of the bigger trucks in that route and actually be? You could.
Yeah.
All right.
And the other benefit would be is that it could be used to help sand the loader route, because without having all the gear on it, if you're just running it as a sander, that would be because the loader route actually has the streets that are narrowest. But that truck could be used for sanding that route. We use a big truck to sand the loader route too, don't get me wrong, but I mean, that's the benefit of having that as a backup would be the biggest selling point. And it's just, I mean, it's a maintenance pig at this point. I mean, it's every year, it takes a lot.
This truck was really not designed for having.
No, I mean, it's been through every new driver that's come through here.
Future discussion, keep it as it is.
We'd have to discuss when we get to the. I mean, I think at the end of this budget, we're going to be looking back and saying, how come we don't have more of a list to pick from? But I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things. This wheel has been a discussion for how many years now? 10 years, anyways.
Probably since they got rid of I believe they used to have one.
Yeah.
Way back.
Probably well over 10 years. This thing's been coming up yearly for discussion. So the idea of it not being, I wouldn't think that it would actually be it's a low-hanging fruit as far as I'm concerned for our equipment. Not saying that we don't need to replace that truck, but that truck could be replaced with something similar that we just bought versus not a wheeler and actually still be sufficient, right? I mean, if in a sense.
If you weren't going to do a wheeler, then I would purchase a same size truck that we've got for everything else.
Yep, be compatible with everything else.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the wheeler right now either.
What's the difference cost-wise between the wheeler and then getting it outfitted versus the one that was just purchased? Probably what, 50, 70,000 maybe? Excuse me.
What are we at? We're at 90, and I think we were at 140. Yeah. And this is 170. Is that what we had?
200.
Yeah, 210.
It has to be at least 50 to 60,000 difference.
Because it was 80,000. I rounded up to 90. It was 150 is what it was, because it was 90 and 60. 60 for the body, 90 for the cabin chassis.
Until I know that the resources.
But that's not even. That's not with a wing and everything on it.
That was with our.
Big fan of what?
With your equipment, buying anything.
Gotcha.
Just
Maybe
the body.
this is with a new.
I heard some things that made me.
As a placeholder moving forward, I think I'm hearing the fact that we will go with the truck with an allotment of 150 for your successor to be able to make the case later.
That would
address the need.
Wholly suffice. Again, the wheeler thing has always been a discussion, and this was the time if you were going to do, because you didn't have a spare body to repurpose.
Right.
This would be the time. If not, by all means, another truck, 8-yard, like we have with the rest of them.
Do-
If we replace that one too, we're not gonna trade off the other one, we can still put it into service in other places,
That would be
right?
used as, like I said, you'd keep it on site as a spare for any, I mean, even the new stuff breaks down.
Right, so we have it as a
And then-
backup, if we have to press it into service, we could always do
And
that.
then it's one, again, that you can stick down with Mark Steven and his crew that doesn't have, generally they don't have a commercial driver's license, and they could have a functioning dump truck to use for their,
Nice.
to help with their operations when they need it. So, I mean, it's there as another alternative.
Is the 150 enough, though? Because didn't we have,
What did
didn't
we
we
do
use some, didn't we put our own body on the new trucks that we just got?
Yes, it would have to be
So it'd
more
be
than that.
180,
It
wouldn't
would
it?
be,
I'm sorry, what?
yes, because it would be, I think it would, I'd have to look
Yeah,
back, I don't
I don't recall, I'm drawing a blank on that.
I'd have to
So
look
instead
back
of
on
210, I'm hearing 170.
that. Yeah, I think that's more along the
One at
lines.
70 or 180?
I think it was 80 for the,
180.
no, I mean, I think it's between
may see that
160 and
when we get there.
170.
One, 170.
170.
Motion carried. We'll hear that forward.
170, okay.
Next. Do we have a preventative maintenance plan, did you say, for public works?
The follow the manufacturer's recommended for oil changes and.
That's it?
Yeah.
And everything's under warranty.
Right now, I mean,
Right.
almost everything is.
But then once it starts,
Not this year.
170?
no, but it's
Okay, that's
still
what we're really
something,
talking
I mean, we don't want to just focus on this year, we want to focus future-wise.
Excuse me, you're saying it eats those trucks up, or what's dumps out the back? Salt and calcium just eats those things up underneath. And the reason that frame's been replaced is, well, one for fatigue, but also,
That one was broken.
I don't
Yeah,
be
yeah.
reactive, I want to be proactive.
Overloaded.
Anything else with PW that we haven't already explored?
Did we say the fuel pumps are out? I just wanna make sure I heard that right.
They're out, they're on the unassigned fund balance right now.
And the amount that's actually there is a reduction because we need to include school and sewer into the dialogue for the percentage of share.
And that amount for 230, that includes,
That was everything to go.
that's
the.
everything. I mean, if we can get it done. for
You could
cheaper.
definitely get it done for cheaper. What I put in, what the recommendation was to do a full, basically self-service island with the canopy lights and,
fire
the
suppression,
whole
all
9
deals.
yards.
Yeah.
There's other alternatives. You can definitely go on the cheap and do it differently, but I mean, with the people that are using the site, especially PW guys and police department, when they're all hours, all increments, to be able to be in a sheltered, and it's not sheltered, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's like a
Canopy.
Yeah. And it's also the new tracking system, because the plan was to put gas and diesel at the same pump. So you would have, and you'd have one, right now you have two independent.
Two tanks, one pump.
Right. And you have two independent key systems right now, too, that you would eliminate and go to.
Shut up,
Norm.
No, if you don't even know what went through my head, just keep going.
Okay. Anything else on PW? Winter ops. What is everybody feeling? The one that stands to mind right now is
Moving per target, so.
the snow, the salt budget is $56,000 overdrawn, and we're talking about a reduction. Sorry, $10,000 increase next year only.
I went with the 9-year average again.
$56,000. So, in your opinion, is the 140 sufficient? Because you're saying 9-year average, so.
The 9-year average is 132, not counting this disaster this year.
Okay.
That doesn't factor into the average, I should say.
Right.
Otherwise, it would be a 10-year average.
And the one right above it, contractual services, gave me a little bit of heartburn too. It's my understanding there's 10 grand for additional amount for removal on the streets that isn't currently there. Would be asking somebody else to do that to take it off the snow removal. That's the difference.
The combination, I mean, we didn't get into pricing to have a private contractor do the entire snow removal operation. And we put 10,000 in as a number for But it's still an unknown on how many times you're going to do snow removal in the downtowns
Right.
each year. I mean, we added it to have funding available to be able to hire contractors if we needed to. And we added more, I think, this year than last year because we kicked around the ideas of having someone else handle the entire operation.
What's the difference? What is not being covered by the current contracted service?
I'm talking for snow removal instead of PW guys.
Okay.
Go in there, storm lasts, whatever. Try to give them at least a couple nights to regroup and then come back and do a nighttime snow removal. If the desire is to get that downtown cleared sooner, then the option that you could look at was hiring a private contractor to do the entire downtown snow removal operation. Their loaders, their trucks, their staff.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if we're subbing it out, does the overtime line go down?
The overtime line probably is never even enough to. It's probably not even at. Where are we at this year?
We're still under budget according to this.
Wow, we're just moving into spring operations too. It's not going to go down much because we only did snow removal a couple times this year, and it wasn't. I mean, they somehow were able to get it done a lot faster than they had in years past. But it's not a significant hit. But it all depends on how many times you got to do it each year too.
And what your level of considering when it needs to be done and when it's not. I mean, that's the thing.
And the way we left it with the public this year was that once you'd accumulated more than 10 inches of snow, I believe, and then we would, if you had a couple of storms and it wasn't melting, and I'll be honest, this spring gave up. It was melting almost as fast as it was piling up, so we.
February that melted off, so.
Yep. But we had a couple snow removal events for sure, and that was our goal. And the feedback from the downtown businesses was positive, so I'm assuming that approach was acceptable.
So how about the $10,000 increase on the contracted services? Where does everybody live on that? I look at it as if status quo was actually working. I don't see it as necessary in my part.
I'm there.
Me too.
This is one of the only part of the budgets that we can actually, that changes as time goes on anyways, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not something that's, if it needs to be more, it is more because you can't control it, so, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not going to, we can talk nice about it being 50K, but if it snows like hell, we got to find a way to find
Knowing
that money
fully well
to
if
take
it's
care
going
of
to be
it.
overrun, it's overrun.
So-
At least we're doing it overrun the way that we're doing it versus subbing it out and building in more cost of an overrun.
I would rather back it off to 50, and then if we go up over because we get hit with snow, it's a lot easier to explain and say, hey, we allocated for X because the year before that covered it. And if we went over this time, we had 2 more storms, 3 more storms, or we had snow until April. God, I hope not next year. But,
So 5215, we're going to 50,000, reduction of 10. I asked the question, school in our salt consumption, Ryan?
I was told no. However, I have seen trucks filled up there.
Where are they getting it from? If they're not from us. No, if they're not getting it from...
I don't know where the contractor is. I know that the little truck that the school has gets salt from us. That's the one I've seen filled up, is the little one.
I believe the school's contractors, they are the only ones that do the sanding and salting.
I guess that was the lion's share of where I was going with that, is as long as we're not having it part of that bid, but that's fine. Because it goes back to the discussion that Alan was asking for last time. We want to try to do something joint when we were talking about something with the sidewalks. At that point, we addressed the sidewalks piece of it, and I know Alan is still having to do what he's doing facility, but I was assuming it was including sand salt as well.
They do that and everything. They don't. From what I know, their subcontracted plow. It's strictly plow.
So anything else would be incidental, and we're not talking a significant amount.
No, I mean,
that's the piece of that's the piece for the sound bite for the listening public in the corner.
I mean, we pretty much hit all the departments too. I mean, water, sewer.
Right.
They're all, and there's no, invoice us for that kind of thing.
Right. The last piece is I know different communities have different philosophies associated with mix ratios. We don't have the capacity to really address it in our current approach. Is it straight salt that we put down, or is it we don't deal with the sand salt mix?
We use a little bit of sand if we have to, depending on the circumstances, but it's pretty much a salt application everywhere.
Side street, primary road, doesn't matter.
Everywhere.
Because I know communities like Lewiston, it's a 4-to-1 on anything other than an artery for a reason. And it actually feeds to the discussion associated with what amounts to a $140,000 line item. The fact is, when you're doing 4-to-1, sand coming in at $7 a yard versus $60, $56.61 a ton for salt, it gets scary quick in this line item. Okay.
I will argue that you're going to pay for it on the other end with sweeping and everything else.
And that's you mentioned that
Catch
last
basin
year too.
cleaning
Agreed.
and the whole 9 yards.
And it's approach.
And then the product if the application rates were adhered to the way they're supposed to be adhered to, in the way they're spelled out in the best management practice manual that DOT put out in concert with all kinds of public works directors, it still is less expensive to do a salt application overall if it's done correctly. I'm still struggling to get salt application done correctly.
Which leads into the next question. We've invested in the sanding equipment. Is that the struggle, or what is the struggle to be able to make that happen?
There's still some bugs on that equipment in terms of calibration, from a calibration standpoint, but I would say more of it than not is operator. And they can't get beyond the having to see it spread out there. I mean, it's that mentality of when the road's coated in sand, everyone's confident that it's a safe road to travel on, and they want to treat it the same way with the salt, and it's been a hard nut to crack.
So I trust in the calibration of what they're actually
Correct.
putting down rather than.
There's no way this is working. It's barely trickling out. Well, that's what a application rate is supposed to look like based on, the standards that are set. I mean, that's the big difference.
So I've noticed in a few areas in town, like at the end of roads, there's like piles of sand just there for no apparent reason. I mean, salt just there. Is that?
Some of that is more of an equipment failure than an operator failure, unless they've raised the side up too much too. And you've got see the piles in the yard just from them loading.
It's not a science. I mean, it's equipment that works.
Right.
And it's micromanaging a job that sucks at the worst period of time because they're out there in it. We're sitting at home bitching about it.
Yep. But there's no need to go down to.
Right. Right. No. But
same
so it's education and trusting the equipment that we put the resource in, and I know we put the resource in last year. That's why I was asking.
And we had the vendor came in and did calibrate all the trucks. And he's got to come back. There's a few that still need to be tweaked. We tried playing with them this winter, and they got better. But some of it's right back to the operator saying that I'm taking off, and it's not spitting out sand like it's salt. Excuse me. And part of that is just they're not going fast enough at that point for it to. I mean, there's all kinds of different things.
Don't bypass it.
Right.
As we always
And then they crank it way up and.
As we compare to other communities for everything else, I mean, is what our usage compatible for our roads similar to what other communities are doing? I mean, for a storm or anything like that. I mean, is there any data at all? I mean, just to.
There is end of year data that we could look at that I have never looked. I've never done that analysis, but I mean, everybody that buys from Avcog, you can see how many tons every community uses, and it'd be a matter of finding out how many miles they have and how many tons they're using. And what their approach is.
I honestly have to say that I travel quite a bit in the wintertime, and I know once I hit Lisbon because the roads are clear.
Well, I would equate it the other way. Lewiston's response is actually consciously supposed to be longer than the surrounding communities because the cost to be able to put that crew out there in the dispersion that you're actually addressing when you hit to our line costs more. it's a conscious decision on Lewiston's part to do it the other way.
Yep.
You had a question, did I interrupt you?
No, the only thing I get concerned about is we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars putting wells on Route 9 because we actually were salting too much. So when you start talking about the idea of just using pure salt or the amount you're putting down, I just wonder how many more side roads are actually, if people started testing wells, if we'll be on the hook for it because of what we're doing. Not that you have any other way of doing it, don't get me wrong, but it's just, it's, people have a way of working around getting contaminated
Someone else
wells.
may have a completely different approach. I mean, I was sold on the idea of anti-icing instead of, because sand has no de-icing capabilities. And that's, between that and the costs for cleanup and everything else, it was just, the product that you can put out being salt-only application is obviously far superior, but you still need a bunch more education with the crew to get your to get the consumption down. And that's just it at this point is they, not running it all the time throughout the storm and taking the care to, if it's snowing, if it's a blizzard, you're plowing more than you're doing any treatment, and that's, that part of it is, and getting a crew that's been here for more than one winter at a time.
Right.
The question that I had was that sidewalk contract, is that actually they clean it, sand it, are they doing spring cleanup on the sidewalks too?
No.
We're responsible on that.
Yep.
Anything else on winter operations? Solid waste.
The medical insurance line is gonna change. We have a vacancy now since I put this budget together, so we'll have to estimate that differently until we fill the position.
The one item that I identified that's significant would be the waste disposal. We signed a contract agreement for a 2% increase. You take 2% of 250, it is 255,000, not 275,000. I would argue that given the amount of staff that we have at that facility, we're doing nothing towards educating people for recycling or taking stuff out of that stream. We're dumping it, and that is growing that cost higher than the 2%. My first reaction, and you guys can talk me off the ledge, my recommendation was to cut 20 grand off that to force the issue for the next person coming in to make their number one goal coming from the solid waste facility to start working towards education to be able to address what's going into our trash stream, knowing that that's going to go up 2% every year.
I think the biggest issue there is they have no staff to do any of that kind of stuff. They're barely able to keep it safe at all. I just don't see how you can demand extra stuff out of them when they're so minimal staff there. You want to throw an extra person on there, yeah, you can do that, and then you got to pay the cost. So pay the piper one way or another.
What do you mean, what are you referring to as educational?
Because you could intercept people going in there and say, okay, don't throw that in there, don't throw that in there.
Right.
But you have to have a person floating around there who can do that.
Wayne Ricker. You knew under Wayne, but that was a different point in time.
He had
because
more money, the budget was a lot larger then.
Right.
I'm just wondering how much of it that we can really control. Even if we have people intercepting and saying, this goes here or that goes there, people have their ways of getting it in there and throwing it in.
Collecting fees, that's the key.
Okay, then.
Right, you could charge people and charge for a bag. You can do whatever you want, but.
Other communities are going to the same place to be able to have the discussion. I know Ryan sat on the panel a couple of years ago by our first year on the council associated with curbside pickup and trash recycling in general. There was a lot of effort put into it for that much action.
Yep, because it turned out to be much more expensive. That was the big killer thing. It was going to be a lot more money to do curbside pickup.
Point that I'm making here is, again, I am very much aware that it actually is tied to staffing. It's a $275,000 commodity that's actually just billed to the community every year that is going to continue to grow with no effort on our part to address it. That's my point.
Have have we seen, like, over the last 5 year, an increase in the tonnage? I mean, has it been, I'm just wondering from staffing levels, I mean, do you see if the staffing level goes down, that tonnage goes up? I mean, I guess, can you actually equate that?
Ryan had tried that because I tried a similar question last year, and what I heard at that point was that the tonnage didn't actually really improve in that point. But it
Well,
is.
and I'm looking at, because I came up with, tried to remember how I did my math here, and I mean, the stuff that's going to the trash is pretty consistent on a monthly basis. I mean, you've had a lot more disposal from, and it's stuff that I don't necessarily think would be recycled materials either. I mean, it's just the OBW debris. I mean, and that's tied to, that's what I'm getting at. I'm not sure if the staffing is going to increase if the staffing issue is something that's going to decrease your disposal costs, or if you're going to see the corresponding increase in revenue.
Right.
Because of the policing there from a revenue standpoint. I don't know as though you're going to see these disposal numbers go down significantly.
To be a different category.
But that's fine.
Right.
If you're collecting it on the other end, I don't care.
See, that's not.
I don't care.
And I guess that's what I'm getting
But
at. is that-
you're saying I'm chasing the wrong side of it.
Yes.
Right, I get that.
If we enforce, we're gonna see more random dumping, regardless.
Because anything that's going in the MWAC, is black plastic bag, anything could be.
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, the only other option is to go clear bags so you can clearly see what's in there, but
There was a point in time Wayne Rico was trying to enforce that too.
I mean, I don't think that that's something that we should be having to supply to the community, and they have to purchase from us. But where are you going to find clear bags?
I can't be the only guy that's actually trying to not look like I'm struggling to lift the contractor's bag as I'm hucking it over the side into that bin.
So you're
I'm
getting
the
rid of
only
some-
one that's actually trying to say that I'm admitting it.
So you're trying to get rid of something that you'd have to pay for, or is it just that you're putting it all in one place? Because I mean, if we had this discussion a little bit too, because recently we had to pay to dispose of, I think it was paper, that normally we would be paid for.
Right.
And so we discussed the idea of throwing it in if it went to single stream, which is where it should go, single stream recycling is more costly for us to get rid of than to just throw it in the hopper.
Right.
So that's, like I say, I mean, a lot of it is, I think you said it, that you're chasing the wrong side of this. It's got to be in a.
So to chase the revenue side, do I still need staffing? Same question.
Definitely.
You'd have somebody there to man the.
I mean, I'm back to the. I mean, it's the flip side of that is, and it's of course, the ideal scenario is, and Wayne was pushing this back then, was the way system. That way, you're able to charge per.
Clear every time. Yeah, you can charge per load, but that load is subjective,
Right,
and
it's
then
very subjective, and somebody's got to make sure they're there to see them dump it, and that they.
Yes.
Right. If you got a gatehouse just like it is, you go to Grimmel's. You weigh in, you weigh out, and you don't get past the gate until you've checked in.
In an ideal world,
Right.
we can come to a more subjective, low cost in moving towards that. But I believe you're right. I believe scales is the way to go long term. But is it worth that six-figure investment? Because it's probably $250,000 to put in a set of scales, plus the manning.
Figure how long it's going to take to pay it back.
Yeah.
That's the question.
I think you're $100,000.
Is it?
Because
I feel better with your number.
Yeah.
Well, I just know that there's a contractor in Bowdoin that just put one in the last few years, and when they were in, I mean, their prices were, I think it was closer to 100. But I don't know how much of that they did on their own too. But the scales themselves, I think, were.
But you still need a person.
Right. Oh yeah, and it's probably more than one. Yeah. Because that guy's sick, and all of a sudden you're same place, same problem. You got every department in town. One person's out sick, and all of a sudden, who's doing what?
Shared resource.
Right.
I think too, I agree with Norm, if we do something like that, it's just gonna encourage dumping. People are not gonna pay that.
Well, I mean, then we have to decide how we want to attack the problem. Even if it does, then if we see an increase in dumping, then Police Chief Hagan, we talk to them and ask them to heighten their awareness of where at least the known spots are that people are trying to do this. We do what we can. Well, I don't know. I think that when we look at We have to do something different than what we're doing right now at the transfer station.
I would take
What
a
if we
look
just-
at the price of the transfer, the permits before any of this stuff. And they're, what are they, $10 a year?
You can always go to pay per bag and get the, like, 30-gallon bags.
Eh.
That's a lot of communities do that.
No, I'm not.
What are you proposing, Chris? Is like an increase in instead of $10?
I mean, it's $10 a month, man.
Yeah.
You mean $10 a year?
year.
I mean, $10 a year.
Yeah.
$20 a year. $40 a
Yeah.
year. $50 a year.
Just up the amount to try to offset the cost. That's not a half bad idea. It's more pain. It's more pain at the one point, but it's just the one point, and that might be a lot easier to absorb as a citizen
So
to
increase
pay
the-
an increase on my
Even
dump
if you went up to
pass.
$50, which I'm not saying that, I'm just saying, even if you did, you're still paying a lot less than most of the surrounding towns.
And I think
If I could get a dump sticker for $50, I'd do it in a second, because I don't have the option in Bowdoin. I pay $66 a month for a dumpster, and I would relish the opportunity to bring as much trash as I wanted to.
And for those that are going to say, oh, well, it's going to be, $50 or $100
So-
for a year,
made that
what if we did it,
recommendation
like,
once
we could
before.
break it down into quarterly?
Well, you could do that. I'm a devil's advocate on the other side of that. 5 times our current
Yeah,
rate
Because
on.
it's tied to your vehicle.
If we're gonna do that, then we
Tied
have to
to
be
your
able to
vehicle.
justify that with some
Excise
facts.
tax.
Well, I mean,
That's
we already
Yeah,
know
I
that we
was-
actually have an increase.
Annual fee that's due in your vehicle, so the point
That's
you
what I
gotta
meant.
come in once
we
a
already,
year.
We already have it. We already have numbers. I mean,
That's what I
basically.
mean. We
Well,
need to make
technically,
that
it's not really-
transparency to support
It's not,
that.
because it expires in August, and if I register my vehicle in March,
Point I'm making is you should be looking at least once a year.
yeah, but I'm just saying, for those people who are going to use that as an argument,
Last time it went up. I mean, has it been changed?
And I don't think it's gone up since it was originally instituted.
So, I mean, it goes up every year. It costs the town more money every year for personnel, and it costs the town more money to get rid of it. So it ought to be a yearly look at. It ought to be at least with the scale of cost of going up, the permits ought to go up. I mean, it's only fair. You know what I mean?
What's the palatable number?
So let's look at, before we figure out the number, let's look at what it is we're trying to compare to. I mean, if we're,
Can we look at that and come back with a recommendation for?
Yeah.
I think the revenues for the stickers, March, I believe it's somewhere in the 30 to 40,000 range right now. For a guess, do you have revenues? You don't have revenues? What do you have?
30 to 40K that we collect off of dump pass revenue?
so I guess the 2%, so what you're saying is, like, things
Contractor,
that shouldn't be in are being thrown in, right?
right, if
and
you
it's
take
costing
you
us to
took, you took
dispose.
2% on top of 250, you're gonna be at 255. We're at $275,000 next year, so you get 20,000 of additional crap that's in that number beyond
Right,
the
but what I'm saying is, what is contributing to that? That people are putting things in that they shouldn't be putting in?
What if I'm
Which
hearing
is-
him is it's not so much that piece, it's the
I'd be
mixed
willing to bet
materials and stuff.
we are not collecting from the yard items like we should be.
I agree.
TVs, mattresses, couches, all that.
Whatever.
Everything
I
gets
agree
dumped.
with the amount of
One that we get, probably 5
any
go through.
observation any given Saturday morning when you got 3 doors open and I'm seeing nobody actually there collecting a dime or even being asked associated with what's being there, there's a problem.
That's a staffing issue again.
They're not looking for
And it goes right back to we don't have the staffing to be able to address it.
And if you're going to raise the prices, you're going to need to put somebody there because
I would
$50. People
I
think
would
it's
venture a
cheap.
guess there are so many people going through our transfer station right now with no pass that don't live here.
I go there on
Just
Saturdays
roll in.
myself, and if I work there on any given Saturday, the 10 or 15 minutes there, I could pick out that many people that I know that do not live in our community. Okay?
Charge them $100 a year.
Especially on Saturday when the place is balls wide. I mean,
And don't think for a minute there ain't contractors, the
Agreed.
less scrupulous contractors rolling through there dumping all their crap that they would have to pay.
I mean, should the permit price, I mean, since it hasn't gone up, I mean, should you be using more of a scientific way of figuring permits? I mean, if the town's actually trying to provide a service without making revenue, but just trying to cover the costs, and you actually kind of start figuring what it costs you to run the transfer station and actually try to figure out how you at least recover your costs. Because if it's an outgoing, the thing I'm thinking about is we collect $50,000 in tickets right now, right, as far as permits.
I found these are from last year, but the numbers last year, the 7-year average was 30,000 for permits.
Which that equates to how many people, probably? I mean, I'm not sure, I can't do the math.
Well, you figure it's one vehicle.
So I'm just thinking the other 220% is $220,000 to being offset by taxpayers who don't use it. You know what I mean? So I mean, why wouldn't you actually tend to come up with some type of ratio that would actually, the people using it, try to actually offset the cost of it?
I mean, if you look
So-
at $100 a year, that'd probably be close.
No,
to
but
paying for it.
the idea of going from 40 to 50 is
Right.
is I mean that would. But I'm saying, I
Right,
mean,
you can help make it
I wouldn't just throw a
$20
number
a
out
year,
there. I would actually, as a town, say, hey, look, if we're going to keep this going, we need to actually justify the expense of it by the idea of having the people use it somewhat offset it, and whatever that be. And again, I still don't know how, going to your point and everybody else's point is, from an average person to a person that's actually doing it commercially, making money off what they're hauling there, because a lot of people hauling there are actually charging the person they're hauling to haul it off and dumping it there.
With no disposal.
Yeah.
You take that into Lewiston, you have no disposal, but you're actually still charging the same premium in Lisbon for the work you'd be doing elsewhere. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, there's, I guess, more, if anything else coming out of this, I mean, it probably is a need to look at whoever's coming in next, or looking at that to actually look
At a minimum, you should be enforcing the fact is, do I have a valid dump sticker or not?
That
At a minimum.
Exactly.
And I don't think that's unrealistic.
Nope.
Because if the fact, we still own the damn
There's
booth
still
that's
three-
actually sitting there,
there's
we
still
just
at
haven't
least-
had it in the line.
There's still at least 3 employees there at any given time. And on Fridays and Saturdays is 4.
Right. I mean, again, that's the one item that stands off this page, and we are in a period where the fact is the costs are going to continue to increase, with nothing being addressed to it. It needs, and more so, we didn't talk about their goals. Fee schedule study, review traffic count, buildings, grounds, equipment maintenance. I'm sorry. That's a weak list.
Well, the first one actually goes to just what we just talked about,
Yeah.
right? The first goal is the idea of actually looking at fee schedules, what they charge and what they collect. I think that's a perfect goal. That's kind of what we've just been talking about. So,
To be able to say it's all being explained away by the scale system, okay, that's, you got my attention if we're willing to be able to commit the resources in the body. The fact is, what are you doing now when we're saying no? The fact is, it's a weak list. We need to address something. That's the new guy coming through associated with that, but we need something for a fee to be able to be figuring out how we're going to do this, and I expect that the enforcement of at least the dump sticker coming into the facility is being looked at.
so what you're saying is we got work to do, but does it change the budget we have in front of us?
Correct.
Probably not, right?
No,
We
but
pretty
it'll
much-
change the revenue.
Yeah.
Rev-
Changes to
Hearing him from his argument is we're chasing the wrong side of this.
But I agree with you saying, but I mean, as far as for us as a council, the budget up
Yes.
front of us isn't going to change. I mean, it basically is going to come down to
Correct.
personnel.
Well, you wanted to back 20 off of it, but you're going away from
I'm cool if I'm leveraging staff. The fact is, his opinion is the fact is chase the revenue side and deal with the compliance.
Leave it in there too.
And the best way to chase
Is
the
that-
revenue size is from the personnel oversight, which is, I mean, I was pretty upfront with Norm. That was my weakest area in terms of spending time.
Right.
And it's one of the areas that needs
attention.
significant,
Needs attention for the cost.
significant direct supervision.
Right. Anybody else got anything on that division that gave them heartburn?
Last one. Woohoo! Sorry, did I say that out loud? I was thinking it.
Patients are running low. The Water Commissioners meeting got out at 6:51. I don't know where the rest of you spent your time before you got here.
Sorry.
You were into the bonus round, my friend.
I'm deep into the bonus.
Oh, I had a Moxie meeting and I went right from work to that, so I haven't even.
From the
All right.
dentist.
For the Piss and Moan Club, let's keep rolling.
To here.
First, I just wanted
Treatment.
to make one quick comment, mainly because this will be the last time I get a chance to address this board, but I do appreciate the last few years, especially working with this group. It's been a good council to work with in comparison to some others that I've worked with. And overall, my time in Lisbon has been very, very rewarding for the most part. There was some significant lows, but the highs really outweighed those lows. And quite honestly, being able to have Steve come up here and do the sewer budget is one of my highs as far as I'm concerned. I started here. Steve had been here a year or so before me, and for us to both kind of expand our career through Lisbon, and then to be able to have him take over the capacity that he has. You guys are very fortunate to have someone that you can thoroughly trust, and will do all his research before he presents anything to you. So my thought process was I wanted him, told him he was going to do them all, and he didn't like that idea, so I said that I would prefer him to actually do the sewer budget, just so that way he could have the experience, and I'll help answer any questions, but quite honestly, I don't really think I need to do anything.
I think you do.
Go for it.
Thank you, Ryan.
Let's talk goals, Mr. Mayor.
All right. This list, when I was originally asked for goals, I left it pretty vague, not knowing what the purpose of that question was. And let's see here. Continually strive to maintain 100% compliance with our DEP-issued wastewater discharge license. It's always a challenge. Something new always comes up for us. Now, and we're striving now with upgrades that we're looking to do through the rural development funding that we have to eliminate some issues. Hopefully in the future things will work a little better, especially during wet weather. And at the same time, if everything works out well, electrical usage, other sources of costs for running the department in the whole will start dropping. Between usage, electrical usage, equipment usage, there may be a benefit down the road with not only eliminating the flows, eliminate any potential issues.
Right.
We're looking at starting this year, this next budget year, started the process to get the necessary pricing to get approval to start our lab testing for our next discharge permit renewal. That permit expires at the end of December 2020. This is the first permit year. Usually we do all the testing in the last permit year. This will be the first permit we've had where we're actually doing it in year 4 instead of year 5. And this is ballpark, it's $7,000-8,000 to do this required testing. And it's all information that DEP has to have before they'll issue a new discharge permit. And
Being proactive is what you're telling us.
that's the goal. And then luckily, everything has to be done within a certain time frame throughout a year. With them giving us an extra year basically to ensure that it is complete. If we run into any issues, some of these tests they cannot be done within 60 days of each other. Some things 90 days. Some things we only do once. So if we run into any issues and have to retest, having that extra year to be able to make up that test is a big benefit for us.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting. I'm very happy that it's going in this direction now. They're giving us a little leeway to be able to get things done in the time frame we have. Of course, we're always looking to do buildings, grounds, equipment, and maintenance. Any type of appearance improvements that we can do. Right now, our number one goal going into this summer. My mouth is dry. Number one goal going into this summer is
no pressure.
We want to put a new gate on the facility, and we're going to attempt to make that ourselves. The gate that is there, if you were to drive in the plant, it's the first thing you see when you drive in once you get down the driveway, and it just looks horrible. The thing's falling apart. It's all twisted where someone's hit it. It's been hit in the past several times. We're going to attempt to do that this year ourselves because we were looking at, I think we had a price at one time about $3,000 to have someone come in and replace it. And we have a fabricator now that works with us in the summer, and for the pay that we're paying him, and if he can make it for us, it could save us potentially about $2,500. We're guessing it'll be about $500 in materials.
Okay.
That's about all I have for that.
Okay. Going through treatment plant budget, anything you guys are seeing to flesh out for discussion purposes? The one that comes to my mind, new sitting in the position yourself, the 12.5 that's budgeted is the same as last year. To better prepare yourself for the coming year, is that adequate?
I'm sorry, which line are we looking at?
Professional services, 5258.
That is, and I'll tell you right up front, and this is one reason I'm glad this guy's sitting here beside me. When it came into lines like that, this is where Ryan would qualify professional services, typically Oliver Associates.
It's whatever would come up in the course of the year that we.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Professional development.
Professional development.
No, you're right.
Yeah, and I'm looking.
We're going to give him $12,000 a year to get educated.
Yeah, sorry.
He may be
Sorry.
happy with that. Yeah.
Well,
Oh, 50 grand.
5121, 22 grand is what I meant to say. Sorry, sir.
No, where you?
Yeah. Is that adequate, being new to the position for yourself? Is there anything that would be added to that, in your opinion? Because it's actually a $500 reduction from last year.
No, typically along the course of time, and there is we have 4 employees that are required to have professional development training to maintain their certification, and 18 hours every 2 years is what is required. That's only 3 classes. One person can take 1 class that may cost $400 and basically get 15 of those hours. We can supplement the other ones with safety training, which we do require safety training every year. And usually classes cost anywhere between about $75 to $150, $200. So I think that is way more than enough than what is needed. We do have, currently this year, we have Mike Stewart, who has a backwater certification. He's required to be recertified every several years, and I believe that's happening in May of this year. It's about $450. And that's basically the most expensive thing we come across right now, unless we decide to send someone to like a management candidate school or along those lines. That's about $800. And that's something we would plan in advance, because that's we have to be able to allow that employee to go. It's once a month for a year to go through that training. And we would know in advance whether we plan on sending somebody, and that wouldn't start till September, so we could work on that in the budget for the next year if that were to come up.
Same question to you, Ryan. New division head.
Yeah, he's already made a mistake. He said that was way more than we needed. That's
Somebody coming in,
Way more,
right.
that's enough.
But point that I'm making there is there a resource from a management that would actually be beneficial that he isn't seeing? He's speaking to the professional credentials.
I mean, I think the class that we went to last year, the personnel management one, those ones, that kind of thing. And again, based on the cost, I think what you have there
Okay.
is probably adequate.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're not setting somebody up for failure. This was it.
You're all done with your research you don't have any classes this year? For you?
No, I'm good for another 2 years.
So, I mean, now it's just based on the way the cycle works with the recertification credit hours. He could take what he'd have for education. Instead of going to wastewater stuff, he could go to management stuff.
I have a question.
Sure.
5203 and 5258. 5203 is for auditing and accounting. It says that it's for the portion of the auditing costs, but yet in 5258 it mentions the Siemens audit for 2,500.
2 different audits. One
Okay.
is the financial audit and one is an energy.
Okay.
Yeah, the Siemens is that. The
I
7
just
years?
wanted to make sure that
It's the 7 years we have for energy efficiency for these buildings and that facility.
just because the numbers were so close to each other, are we putting it in twice?
The meter reads at 10,000 flat. I mean, is that that's based on any ratios or numbers? That just someday someone said, "Hey, look, we'll give you 10 grand if you actually read the meters." I mean, it's just a very well-rounded number. That's all. Is that?
That was the number that we started off from the beginning. We don't have an average because we've only been doing it for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Prior to that, they weren't being charged.
Weren't being charged.
The
So
water department was doing all of this.
that's just So is it just more of a straightforward number? I mean, basically what it came. So
That
it
goes
doesn't
back
change.
to the
Doesn't change
long
yearly.
history between the water department and the town, and who was going to get billed for what and charged for what and how much, and that was the number that was always bandied about. So that's what's in the budget.
That's what's there. Okay, just curious.
I think there is some sort of formula. I don't know if you'd have to
contact Shelley about it.
Yeah.
Why come?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
are only billed at a certain rate, and I don't
Yeah.
know, I think that when we first started doing it, we started at that, and we left it there, and then I'm honestly not sure, because I know we ran into a problem with the billing this past year where we didn't get because we reimburse the water department for the sewer bills that get sent out.
Yep.
And some of that's a timing thing too, so I mean, it's just a matter of when we get the bills from them.
Okay, I was just curious. It just seemed like
It could use some more in-depth review, but I mean,
it's fine as long as it works. I was just curious. It just seemed like a really well-rounded number. That's all.
Steve, your 5385 supplies other, is that the training, the testing you were referring to for starting that in year 4?
Yes, that is actually our full lab budget for the laboratory itself. It covers outside lab testing, chemicals, supplies, and that nature. And for this year, that increase is for the extra lab testing.
So the goal that you referenced, okay. Talk to me about the improvements to 190. This is outside the scope of what we just bonded, right? And what is it?
Yes.
5425.
Yes, thank you, sir.
That is the dumping station that we need. Since we bought the new Vector truck in 2014, significantly larger than the truck we had. We have nowhere to dump it if we were to do any type of vacuum type work in the sewer system. And we've been trying to work on getting a dump station in there, and that's a number that was put in our sewer system evaluation from Oliver Associates.
So where's it currently being dumped?
That's where the issue lies. We don't do a lot of vacuuming with that truck, especially if we're dealing with sand and stuff like that. On the sewer side.
Okay.
On the stormwater side, yes, we do use it for that. But on the sewer side, we haven't been doing any unless necessary. And at times, Ted Berry we called in to do that work, just because we have nowhere to dump it.
But on the CSO side or catch basins, we're fine.
MS4 side, the stormwater, we do use it for vacuuming the catch basins.
So the lion's share of what you're actually doing with that isn't actually benefiting sewer, it's benefiting the other need within the community.
Yes.
Okay.
But the dumping station's been in the budget.
Yeah.
We
No.
discussed for several years. This year, we brought Peter to pay Paul with Vineland Road, so that's why we're asking for it again.
We also, as a condition of that grant through rural development, we have to have a certain percentage of improvements that we have to raise every year and set aside in a reserve.
I got nothing else. What are you guys hearing? You hit the targets associated with it.
I say good night.
No, let's
That's what.
I'm here.
get the new kid on the ropes. Let's work
Get
him
the
over
new
a little.
kids up.
Work 'em over.
There are no kids in the room. All right.
Right.
None.
I have one question, actually. Sorry.
You can say you would.
I can go line by line if you want.
You got time. We ain't going nowhere.
5211 mentions the half of the tablet used for field inspections.
I believe DPW is charged the other half for that.
Okay.
Because it's used mainly for MS4
Okay.
from one inspections.
That line's gonna change too. I've got to adjust it up for the cell phones, for the stipend.
I was gonna say, are we gonna change that from $5 a week to a stipend, or?
It already is, but it's not at the same stipend as we're doing everybody else, so I wanna make everybody consistent, so that's gonna go up some.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that question, because that's caught my attention, because that wasn't on the same thing.
We've all seen Dot over there. If you haven't, Dot's got her hand up.
I have not seen it, thank you.
Very quiet.
Great job.
Director of Management, Public Works, $75,000, and the treatment plant, $82,000. Is that the one person? How many people?
That's for Steve.
We did a survey on that Dot based on his level of certification, license, and the size collection system we have, and that's what we came up with for a salary for that position.
One position, Dot.
It's one
Correct.
position, not two.
No, it's not holy crap, but it is crap.
Getting the PW director pay.
Any other questions tonight?
Can I go home?
I apologize for the late hour. I
Nice
know
work,
it is.
everybody.
Good, yeah,
Nice
made it
work.
through it.
Yeah, nice work. Nobody bled today, that's good.
Thank you all.
Somebody's gonna call this meeting.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
He's out.
I didn't think we could vote on these, but I
Yeah.
did.
Exactly.
Michelle can turn off the little red dot.
The tracer light.
Yep. Headshot.
Oh my god. Crap, I gotta like
Come on,
crawl underneath the table to grab my purse.